They laughed when she stepped into the command room until the alarm screamed and 12 armed enemies closed in. 5 minutes later, the battlefield would fall silent, and no one would ever laugh again. Commander Raven Cole, 32 years old, elite sniper, zero room for error, one trapped team, 12 hostiles, 800 meters of darkness between survival and slaughter. The clock was ticking. The doubters were watching, and failure wasn't an option. She raised her rifle. The wind shifted, and in that moment, everything changed. Before we dive in, if you're hooked, stick with me until the very end. Drop a like, comment where you're watching from, and let me see how far this story travels. Now, let's begin. The helicopter blades carved through thin mountain air like knives through silk, the rotor's rhythmic thump echoing against sheer granite cliffs that stretched endlessly into a bruised twilight sky. Inside the cargo bay, Commander Raven Cole sat motionless, her hands resting on her knees, eyes fixed on nothing, or everything. The vibration rattled through the metal frame, through her boots, through her bones, but she didn't move, didn't blink. She'd learned a long time ago that stillness was a weapon. Across from her, Lieutenant Marcus Webb shifted in his harness, his jaw working over a piece of gum that had long since lost its flavor. He was young, 26, maybe 27, with the kind of square-shouldered confidence that came from too many training wins and not enough real bullets. His eyes kept flicking toward Raven, then away, then back again. Finally, he leaned forward. "First time at Outpost Griffin?" he asked, voice raised over the rotor noise. Raven's gaze slid toward him, cool, measured. "No." Webb waited for more. When nothing came, he tried again. "Heard it's a tough crowd. Old school types. Not big on change." Change? Raven's lips quirked, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what they're calling it now?" Webb opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked toward the cockpit instead. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. 2 minutes to LZ, Commander." Raven pressed the comms button. "Copy." She stood, movements economical, precise. Her gear hung perfectly balanced, rifle slung across her back, sidearm secured at her thigh, tactical vest loaded with magazines, rangefinder, wind meter, and a dozen other tools of her trade. Everything had a place. Everything had a purpose. Webb watched her check her weapon. A custom-built bolt-action rifle, matte black, no serial number visible. The kind of gun that didn't exist on any official manifest. "That's a Remington 700, right?" Webb asked. "Heard you made over 400 confirmed—" "Stop." The word cut through the cabin like a blade. Webb froze. Raven didn't look at him. She chambered a round, smooth and practiced, then safetied the rifle and slung it back over her shoulder. When she finally met his eyes, her expression was unreadable. "Numbers don't matter," she said quietly. "Only the shot that counts." The helicopter banked hard, descending rapidly. Through the open side door, the outpost materialized from the dust and fading light, a cluster of prefab structures surrounded by sandbags, razor wire, and watchtowers that looked like skeletal fingers clawing at the sky. The place had been carved into the mountainside like a wound, functional and brutal. The skids touched down. Dust exploded outward in a blinding cloud. Raven stepped out before the wheels fully settled, her boots hitting packed earth. The rotor wash tore at her jacket, whipped her dark hair across her face. She swept it back with one hand, scanning the compound with the kind of practiced sweep that missed nothing. Guard positions, sight lines, dead zones. A cluster of men stood near the main building, arms crossed, faces hard. Waiting. Webb jumped down behind her, shouldering his pack. "Welcoming committee," he muttered. Raven didn't respond. She was already moving, crossing the landing zone with long, purposeful strides. The helicopter lifted off behind them, its thunder fading into the distance until all that remained was wind and silence. The men didn't move as she approached, 5 of them, ranging from mid-30s to pushing 50. Combat veterans, every one of them. She could see it in the way they stood, the scars on their hands, the 1,000-yard stare that never quite left their eyes. The one in front was built like a stone wall, 6'2", 220, with a buzz cut gone silver at the temples and a jaw that looked like it had been chiseled from granite. His uniform was starched despite the dust, rank insignia crisp. Major. His name tape read Stone. He looked Raven up and down, slow and deliberate, then glanced at the men beside him. Someone snorted. Not loud, just enough. "Commander Cole," Stone said. His voice was gravel and whiskey. "Welcome to Griffin." Major. Raven stopped 6 feet out, hands relaxed at her sides. Neutral ground. Hell of a flight in, Stone continued. Thermals this time of day, wind shear off the ridge, takes a steady hand. The pilots are good. They are. Stone nodded slowly. We've been operating out here for 18 months. Good men, experienced, know the terrain, know the enemy. He paused. Know each other. There it was. The first shot across the bow. Raven met his gaze, unflinching. I'm sure you do.
It is, but Aunties,
One of the men behind Stone shifted his weight, a stocky sergeant with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow. He spat into the dust. 18 months, he echoed. Not 18 days, not some photo op rotation. Raven turned her attention to him. You have something to say, Sergeant? Briggs. He didn't step forward, but his posture squared. Just making observations, ma'am. Observations. Raven's tone was flat. Noted. Stone raised a hand, subtle but firm. Briggs backed down, but the tension lingered like smoke. We got word you'd be joining us, Stone said. Command was enthusiastic about your skills. Said you'd be an asset for specialized operations. He let that hang for a moment. They didn't mention you'd be taking operational command. I won't be, Raven replied evenly, unless the situation requires it. And who decides when the situation requires it? The situation. Stone's eyes narrowed. For a long moment, the only sound was the wind scraping across the compound, rattling the chain link and moaning through the watchtowers. Finally, Stone nodded toward the main building. Your quarters are ready. Briefing at 0600. We run a tight ship here, Commander. No exceptions. Understood. Good. Stone turned to walk away, then paused. One more thing. Raven waited. Out here, reputation doesn't mean much. Medals, commendations, headlines back home. He shook his head slowly. That's all noise. What matters is what you do when the bullets start flying and your team is counting on you. His gaze hardened. We'll see what you're made of soon enough. He walked away. The others followed, throwing glances over their shoulders, some curious, some hostile, all skeptical. Webb exhaled slowly beside her. Well, that went great. Raven slung her rifle higher on her shoulder. Could have been worse. How? They could have shot me. Webb blinked. That's not comforting. Wasn't meant to be. Raven started toward the barracks. Get settled. Stay sharp. And Webb? Yeah? Stop chewing gum on ops. The smell carries. Webb looked down at the wad in his hand, bewildered. How did you... But Raven was already gone, disappearing into the shadows between buildings. The quarters were Spartan. Metal bunk, footlocker, single bulb hanging from the ceiling. A narrow window overlooked the eastern perimeter, beyond which the mountains dropped away into a valley cloaked in creeping darkness. Raven set her gear down methodically, checking each piece, cleaning what needed cleaning, organizing what needed organizing. Muscle memory. Ritual. A knock rattled the door frame. She turned. A woman stood in the doorway, late 20s, lean and wiry, with short-cropped blonde hair and the kind of sharp, intelligent eyes that didn't miss anything. She wore fatigues and a comms headset pushed up on her forehead. Her name tape read Carter. Commander Cole? The woman's voice was clipped, professional. I'm Specialist Carter, comms and intel. Major Stone wanted me to bring you up to speed before the briefing. Raven gestured to the bunk. Come in. Carter stepped inside, closing the door behind her. She pulled out a tablet, fingers flying across the screen. Griffin's primary mission is forward observation and reconnaissance. We monitor enemy movement through the valley, coordinate with drone surveillance, and provide targeting data for strike operations. Enemy composition? Varies. Insurgent cells, foreign fighters, local militia. They rotate through the region, use the caves for resupply and staging. We've identified at least 3 major networks operating independently. Carter swiped to a map, topographical, dense with markings. Terrain is brutal. No roads, limited air support due to weather patterns. If something goes wrong out there, extraction is complicated. How complicated? Carter met her eyes. Last month, a patrol got pinned down in Sector 7. By the time QRF arrived, 2 KIA, 4 wounded. It took 6 hours. 6 hours. Yes, ma'am. Raven studied the map, committing routes and elevations to memory. What's the enemy's capability? They're not amateurs. Small arms, RPGs, some heavier machine guns. They know the land better than we do, and they're patient. They'll wait days for the right shot. Carter hesitated. We've also had reports of counter-sniper activity. That got Raven's attention. Reports? 3 incidents in the last 2 months. Long-range kills, precise placement, professional execution.
Whoever they are, they're good.
Good enough to worry about? Carter's jaw tightened. Good enough that Sergeant Hayes won't go near the ridgeline anymore. And Hayes has been here since day 1. Raven filed that away. Anything else? Just, Carter paused, choosing her words carefully. The men here, they've been through a lot. They're tired. Some of them are angry. And most of them don't think a woman belongs in the field, let alone in command. I know. I'm just saying, don't expect them to make it easy. Raven's expression didn't change. I don't expect anything. I just do the job. Carter studied her for a moment, then nodded slowly. Fair enough. She stood, heading for the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, Commander, I hope you prove them wrong. I don't care about proving anyone wrong, Specialist. I care about bringing people home. Carter smiled, small, genuine. Then you're already better than half the officers I've worked with. She left. Raven returned to the window, watching the darkness swallow the valley whole. Somewhere out there, in the folds of rock and shadow, someone was watching back. She could feel it. The briefing room was cramped. Folding table, metal chairs, a projector throwing a pale blue glow onto a stained wall. The air smelled like coffee and sweat, and something metallic that might have been blood or might have been rust. Stone stood at the head of the table, arms crossed. Briggs sat to his right, still glowering. Across from them were 3 others. Hayes, a thin, wiry man with nervous hands. Ortega, built like a fire hydrant with a thick mustache. And Daniels, the youngest of the group, with freckles and red hair that made him look about 17. Raven entered exactly at 0600. Every eye tracked her as she took a seat near the back, away from the table, observing. Stone didn't acknowledge her. He tapped the table and Carter activated the projector. A satellite image appeared, grainy, black and white, riddled with thermal signatures. Sector 9, Stone began. 18 clicks northeast. Intelligence indicates a high-value target. Foreign operative coordinating weapons shipments through the valley. Codename, Wraith. Briggs leaned forward. What's the play? Recon team inserts at dawn, establishes overwatch, confirms identity. If positive ID, we call in an airstrike. And if the weather scrubs the strike? Ortega asked. Stone's expression darkened. Then the recon team extracts, and we try again. Raven spoke for the first time. What's the backup plan if the team gets compromised? Every head turned. Stone's jaw worked. QRF mobilize. Standard protocol. QRF response time? 45 minutes to an hour, depending on conditions. And if they're pinned down in hostile terrain with limited cover and overwhelming enemy fire? Silence. Stone's eyes narrowed. What are you suggesting, Commander? Raven leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. I'm asking what happens when the plan fails. Because plans always fail. Briggs slammed his hand on the table. We've run dozens of ops out here. We know what we're doing. I'm sure you do, Raven said calmly, but knowing and adapting aren't the same thing. Maybe where you come from, they send people in without a plan. Sergeant, Stone's voice cracked like a whip. Briggs shut up, fuming. Stone turned back to Raven. If you have a suggestion, Commander, now's the time. Raven stood, moving to the map. She traced a finger along a ridgeline overlooking Sector 9. Sniper overwatch, here. 800 meters, clear line of sight, multiple egress routes. If the team gets hit, I can provide suppressing fire and delay enemy movement until QRF arrives. 1 shooter? Hayes looked incredulous. Against how many? Enough. Ortega shook his head. That's insane. That's my job. Stone studied her, expression unreadable. You're talking about going in solo. No spotter, no backup. Correct. And if you get compromised? I won't. But if you do? Raven met his gaze. Then the recon team still has a better chance than they would without me. The room went silent. Carter looked between Stone and Raven, tension crackling like static electricity. Finally, Stone exhaled. Negative. Too much risk, not enough gain. We stick to the original plan. Understood. Raven returned to her seat without argument. Stone blinked, clearly expecting a fight. When none came, he continued the briefing, detailing timelines, equipment checks, radio frequencies. Raven listened, memorizing everything, saying nothing. The meeting ended. The men filed out, muttering amongst themselves. Stone remained, watching Raven as she gathered her notes. "You disagree with my call," he said. "It wasn't a question." Raven looked up. "It's your command, Major." "That's not an answer." She held his gaze. "You asked for my assessment. I gave it. You made your decision. That's how this works." Stone stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I've read your file, Cole. All of it. The redacted parts, too." His eyes were hard. "You've got skills. No one's disputing that. But skills don't mean you're a team player. And out here, lone wolves get people killed." "I'm not a lone wolf, Major. I'm a sniper. There's a difference." "Is there?" Raven's expression didn't waver. "A lone wolf acts for itself. I act for the mission, for the team. Even when the team doesn't trust me yet." Stone studied her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "We'll see." He turned toward the door, then paused. "One more thing. If you ever contradict me in front of my men again, we're going to have a problem." "Noted." He left. Carter emerged from the shadows near the projector, shutting it down. "You handled that well." "Did I?" "Better than I would have." Carter coiled a cable around her hand. "For what it's worth, I think you're right about the Overwatch. Doesn't matter what I think, matters what he decides. Still," Carter glanced toward the door, "just watch your back, Commander. Stone's a good officer, but he's old school, and old school doesn't like being challenged." Raven slung her rifle over her shoulder. "Old school doesn't like a lot of things. Doesn't mean they're wrong. And if they are, then people die." Raven headed for the door. "That's why we don't let them be wrong." The days blurred together. Patrols, maintenance, waiting. Raven kept to herself, running solo training drills at dawn, practicing calculations in the makeshift range they'd carved into the hillside. She didn't join the men for meals, didn't participate in the banter, the card games, the late-night bullshit sessions that kept morale from crumbling entirely. She could feel their eyes on her, always watching, always measuring, waiting for her to fail. On the third day, Daniels approached her at the range. He stood awkwardly at the edge of the firing line, hands shoved in his pockets. "Commander?" Raven looked up from her scope adjustments. "Daniels, He shifted his weight. "I wanted to ask, can I watch? Your technique, I mean. I'm trying to get better at long range and..." "No." Daniels blinked. "Oh, okay, sorry. I just thought..." "You thought wrong." Raven returned to her rifle. "This isn't a classroom. I'm not here to teach." "Right, yeah, sorry." Daniels backed away, face flushed. He made it 5 steps before Raven spoke again. "Daniels." He turned. "Your breathing's off. You're holding too long before the shot. Let it out halfway, then squeeze. Don't fight the rifle." Daniels stared. Thanks, Commander." Raven didn't look up. "Don't thank me. Just fix it." He jogged off, something like hope in his stride. Carter appeared beside her a moment later, arms crossed, smirking. "That was almost nice of you." "Wasn't nice. It was practical. Dead weight gets people killed." "Uh-huh." Carter's smirk widened. "Keep telling yourself that." Raven ignored her, lining up another shot. The target was a rusted oil drum 800 meters downrange, barely visible through the heat shimmer. She breathed in, out, halfway, held, crack. The drum rang like a bell, a perfect center hit. Carter whistled low. "Every time I see you shoot, it's like watching magic." "It's math." "Wind, distance, gravity, temperature. No magic, just variables." "Sure." Carter squinted downrange. "But most people can't solve that equation in 2 seconds. Then they should practice more." Before Carter could respond, a voice crackled over the radio clipped to her vest. "All personnel, this is Overwatch. We have movement in Sector 7, multiple contacts, heavy weapons. Recon Team Delta is engaged. I repeat, Delta is engaged and taking fire." Carter's expression shifted instantly. All business. She pressed her comms. "Copy, Overwatch, status?" The radio hissed, then a new voice broke through, younger, panicked, overlaid with the unmistakable crack, crack, crack of gunfire. "This is Delta 2. We're pinned down, southeast ridge. They came out of nowhere. 12, maybe 15 hostiles. We've got 2 wounded, can't move. They're closing in. Stone's voice cut in, harsh and controlled. Delta, hold position. QRF is mobilizing. ETA 40 minutes. 40 minutes? We don't have... Explosions boomed through the transmission. Screaming, then static. Carter's face went pale. Jesus! Raven was already moving, slinging her rifle, grabbing her gear. Carter grabbed her arm. What are you doing? My job. Stone said, hold. Raven pulled free, eyes hard. He didn't say do nothing. She sprinted toward the command building. Carter followed, shouting into her radio. Commander Cole is moving. Someone stop her! Raven burst through the command room door. Stone was bent over a map, radio handset pressed to his ear, coordinating the QRF. He looked up, eyes blazing. Cole, stand down. They don't have 40 minutes. Raven planted her hands on the table, leaning in. I can be in position in 15. Provide covering fire. Buy them time. Negative, too risky. They're dying right now. And I'm not sending you on a suicide run. It's not suicide. Raven's voice was steel. It's the only option that doesn't end with body bags. Stone slammed the handset down. This is my command. You follow orders or you're grounded. Raven stared him down, jaw clenched, every muscle coiled. The room held its breath. Then she straightened, nodded once. Copy. She turned and walked out. Stone exhaled, running a hand over his face. Briggs stepped forward. You think she'll actually stand down? Stone looked toward the door, doubt creeping into his eyes. I don't know. Raven moved through the compound like a ghost, checking her rifle, her magazines, her rangefinder. Her mind was already calculating distance to Sector 7, terrain elevation, wind patterns at this time of day. 15 minutes. She could make it in 12 if she pushed. Webb appeared, jogging to catch up. Commander, what's the play? There is no play. Stand down. Bullshit. Webb's voice was low, urgent. I know that look. You're going. Raven stopped, turning to face him. If I go, it's insubordination. Stone will have me court-martialed. If you don't go, Delta dies. Webb met her eyes. What's the point of being the best if you don't use it when it counts? For a moment, Raven said nothing. Then she handed him her sidearm. Hold this. If I'm not back in 2 hours, give it to Stone. Tell him I acted alone. Webb took the weapon. What do you need from me? Stay off the comms. Don't get involved. And if anyone asks, you tried to stop me. Tried? Raven's lips quirked. You weren't very good at it. She ran. Behind her, alarms started blaring. Stone's voice boomed over the PA system. Commander Cole, return to base immediately. That's a direct order. Raven didn't slow down. She hit the perimeter fence at a dead sprint, vaulted over the razor wire, and disappeared into the rocks beyond. The mountain swallowed her whole. And in the valley below, 12 enemies tightened their circle around Delta Team, unaware that a hunter had just entered the field. The sun was setting, and Raven Cole was done asking for permission. The ridge was a knife edge of stone and dirt, wind screaming across its face like something alive and angry. Raven moved low, rifle slung tight across her back, boots finding purchase on rocks that crumbled under her weight. Below, muzzle flashes lit the darkness. Delta Team pinned in a dried riverbed, bodies pressed against boulders, bullets chewing the stone to dust. She counted the hostiles, 12 visible, maybe more in the shadows. Delta was down to 4 effectives, 2 wounded. They were out of time. Raven found her position, a flat outcrop overlooking the kill zone, 800 meters downrange. Perfect sight lines. No cover behind her, but that didn't matter. If someone got close enough to shoot her from behind, she was already dead. She dropped to her stomach, deploying the bipod, checking the scope. The reticle swam into focus, crystal clear, magnified, steady. Her heartbeat slowed, breath deepened, the world narrowed to wind, distance, and target. The radio crackled in her ear. Stone's voice, icy with fury. Cole, if you can hear this, turn around. Now. She didn't respond. Couldn't afford the distraction. Her crosshairs settled on the first target, an enemy fighter moving between cover, RPG slung over his shoulder. The shot was clean. 800 meters, 15-knot crosswind from the southwest, uphill angle adding 2 degrees of elevation. She adjusted, breathed, squeezed. The rifle kicked. The sound cracked across the valley like thunder. Downrange, the fighter dropped, the RPG clattering uselessly into the dirt. For a heartbeat, everything froze. Then chaos erupted. The enemy formation scattered, shouting, searching for the shooter. Raven was already chambering the next round, acquiring the second target, a machine gunner raking Delta's position. She led him by half a body length, compensating for his movement. Crack! He went down mid-stride. Delta's radio exploded with disbelief. What the hell? Someone's shooting them! Who's out there? Raven didn't answer. Third target, fourth. Each shot measured, deliberate, precise. She moved through them like clockwork. Each pull of the trigger another enemy removed from the equation. The hostiles were panicking now, firing wildly into the darkness, hitting nothing. They couldn't see her, didn't know where the death was coming from. Raven allowed herself 1 second of satisfaction. Then the wind changed. A bullet slammed into the rock 6 inches from her head, shards exploding across her face. She rolled left, instinct overriding thought, another round cracking past her ear. Counter-sniper. Raven's pulse spiked. She pressed herself flat, scanning the opposite ridge through her scope. There. A muzzle flash. Maybe 900 meters out. Elevated position. Professional setup. Whoever it was, they were good. The radio crackled. Stone's voice, different now. Controlled, but urgent. Cole? I don't know what you're doing, but QRF is 10 minutes out. If you're there, get out, now. Raven keyed her mic, voice calm. Delta's got 5 minutes if I don't finish this. Then finish it and extract. She didn't respond. The counter-sniper fired again, close enough that she felt the pressure wave. They were zeroing in. Raven made a choice. She moved, not back, not to safety, forward. She scrambled down the ridge, using the terrain for cover, closing the distance. The enemy sniper would expect her to retreat, to seek better cover. Instead, she was flanking, cutting through a dry creek bed choked with scrub and stone. Bullets tracked her, kicking up dirt. She didn't stop. 200 meters. 150. 100. She saw him. A figure prone on a ridgeline, rifle trained on her last position. Waiting. Raven dropped, bringing her rifle up. The angle was wrong. The shot nearly impossible. 60 degrees uphill, wind gusting, her own pulse hammering. They turned toward each other at the same time. 2 snipers. 1 second. The world held its breath. Raven fired. The enemy sniper fired. Both rifles cracked as one, sound merging into a single thunderclap that echoed across the valley. Then silence. Raven lay motionless, waiting for pain. Waiting to feel the bullet tear through her. Nothing. She looked up. The enemy sniper was slumped forward, rifle sliding from lifeless hands, tumbling down the rocks. Raven had missed her mark by centimeters. The enemy's shot had been even closer. She could see the torn fabric on her shoulder, the bullet having passed through without touching skin. She sucked in a breath, tasted dust and adrenaline. Below, Delta team was shouting, engines roaring in the distance. QRF had arrived. Raven stood slowly, legs shaking, rifle still raised. The battlefield had gone quiet. No more muzzle flashes, no more screaming, just wind and darkness and the distant thump of helicopter blades. She keyed her radio. Delta, sound off. A breathless voice responded. Delta 2, we're all here, all alive. Jesus Christ, who... Extraction in 30 seconds. Move. Copy. Raven turned and started the long climb back to base. Behind her, the valley was silent. And somewhere in the darkness, Major Stone was waiting. The compound's floodlights burned like accusatory eyes as Raven climbed the last 50 meters to the fence line. Her legs were lead, her shoulders screaming from the near miss that had torn fabric but left skin intact. Dust caked her face, mixing with sweat and the metallic taste of adrenaline that still hadn't faded. She could see them waiting. A wall of silhouettes backlit by harsh white light, arms crossed, rifles slung. Stone stood at the center, statue still, his expression carved from granite. Raven didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. She walked straight through the gate, past the razor wire, past the guards who stepped aside like she carried a plague. Stone's voice cut through the night. Commander Cole? She stopped, didn't turn around. Face me. Raven pivoted slowly. Her rifle hung loose at her side, barrel pointed down, safety on. Non-threatening. But her eyes were anything but. Stone closed the distance between them, boots crunching on gravel. When he spoke, his voice was low enough that only she could hear it. You disobeyed a direct order. Yes, sir. You endangered yourself and compromised operational security. Yes, sir. You acted without authorization, without backup, and without regard for chain of command. Raven met his gaze head on. Yes, sir. Stone's jaw worked. Behind him, Briggs muttered something to Ortega, both of them watching like spectators at an execution. Carter stood apart from the group, her expression unreadable. Delta Team is alive, Raven said quietly. All of them. No casualties. That's not the point. Isn't it? Stone stepped closer, voice dropping to a razor's edge. The point, Commander, is that you made me look like a fool in front of my men. You decided you knew better than everyone else. You went rogue. I went to work. You went against orders. I saved lives. Raven's voice didn't rise, but the intensity behind it hit like a shockwave. 12 hostiles eliminated, 1 enemy sniper neutralized, Delta extracted with 0 losses. What part of that was wrong, Major? Stone's face flushed red. The part where you ignored? Ignored what? A decision that would have gotten 4 men killed. Raven took a step forward, closing the gap. You said 40 minutes. They had 5. I did the math. Someone had to. It wasn't your call to make. Then whose was it? Raven's eyes blazed. Because from where I stood, no one else was making it. The silence that followed was suffocating. The wind had died, leaving only the hum of generators and the distant crackle of radio chatter. Every man in that compound was listening, watching the 2 officers face off like gunslingers in the middle of a dusty street. Finally, Stone spoke. His voice was cold, controlled. You're confined to quarters pending formal review. Surrender your weapon. Raven unslung her rifle without hesitation, holding it out. Stone took it, his grip tight enough to make the metal creak. Dismissed. Raven turned and walked toward the barracks. She could feel their eyes burning into her back. Some satisfied, some confused, some quietly impressed. She didn't care. Didn't look back. Webb appeared beside her halfway across the compound, falling into step. That went well? Oh, shut up, Webb. Just saying. Could have been worse. Could have been better. Could have been dead. Webb glanced at her, concern flickering across his young face. You came back. That's something. Raven didn't respond. She pushed through the barracks door and into the narrow hallway, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Her quarters were at the end. Metal door, no nameplate, just a number stenciled in faded paint. She stepped inside and closed the door. The walls pressed in. The silence roared. Raven sat on the edge of the bunk, hands resting on her knees, and let herself breathe. Just breathe. Her fingers were still steady, no tremor, no shake. But inside, the adrenaline was crashing, leaving behind exhaustion that went bone deep. The enemy sniper's face flashed through her mind. Just a shadow, really. A silhouette against the rocks. She'd never seen their eyes, never heard their voice. But in that single second before the shots, there had been recognition. 2 predators acknowledging each other across the void. Only one had walked away. A knock rattled the door. Raven didn't move. Go away! The door opened anyway. Carter stepped inside, carrying a med kit and a canteen. She shut the door behind her, leaning against it. You're bleeding! Raven touched her cheek, fingers coming away dark. Shrapnel, it's nothing. Let me be the judge of that. Carter crossed the room, dropping the kit on the bunk. Sit still. Raven didn't argue. Carter worked quickly, cleaning the cuts with antiseptic that stung like fire, applying butterfly bandages where needed. Her hands were steady, practiced. You've done this before, Raven said. Combat medic. 2 deployments before I switched to comms. Carter pressed gauze to a deeper cut above Raven's eyebrow. Hold that. Raven obeyed. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the rustle of packaging and the distant hum of the bass. Finally, Carter spoke. They're calling you crazy, you know. I know. Briggs says you have a death wish. Briggs says a lot of things. Carter smiled faintly. Yeah, he does. She taped the gauze down, then sat back, studying Raven. Delta Team wants to thank you. Stone won't let them near you, but they know what you did. They don't owe me anything. Maybe not, but they're alive because of you. Carter capped the antiseptic, packing the kit. That counts for something. Raven looked down at her hands, calloused, scarred. The hands of someone who'd pulled a trigger more times than she could count. Does it? Carter didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was softer. Stone's not a bad officer, but he's scared. That got Raven's attention. Of what? Of change, of losing control, of someone coming in and proving that his way isn't the only way. Carter stood, slinging the kit over her shoulder. You did that tonight, and now he has to decide if he's going to adapt or double down. What do you think he'll do? Carter paused at the door. I think he's a soldier, and soldiers don't like admitting they're wrong. She glanced back. Get some rest, Commander. Tomorrow's going to be rough. She left. Raven lay back on the bunk, staring at the ceiling. Pipes ran overhead, streaked with rust and condensation. Somewhere in the distance, a generator coughed and sputtered before settling back into rhythm. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in hours, her hands began to shake. Morning came harsh and unforgiving. Raven woke to the sound of boots outside her door. Guards, Stone had posted them. She dressed in silence, checked her gear out of habit, then realized she had no rifle to check. It felt wrong, like missing a limb. The door opened without a knock. Stone stood framed in the doorway, backlit by pale dawn. His expression was unreadable. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. Raven followed him out into the compound. The sun was just cresting the mountains, painting the sky in shades of bruised purple and burning orange. The air was cold, sharp enough to cut. They walked in silence past the motor pool, past the supply depot, out toward the perimeter fence where the land dropped away into nothing. Stone stopped at the edge, hands clasped behind his back, staring out at the valley. I spoke to command, he said finally. Told them what happened. Raven waited. They're impressed. The word came out like he was chewing glass. Delta team confirmed your kill count. 12 hostiles, 1 counter sniper. All targets eliminated with precision at extreme range under combat conditions. He paused. They're calling it one of the most effective single-operator interventions in recent memory. I did my job. You did more than that. Stone turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something other than anger in his eyes. Confusion. Maybe even respect. You saved 4 lives. Maybe more, if that enemy sniper had stayed in play. So what happens now? Stone exhaled slowly. Officially, you're being reprimanded for insubordination. It goes in your file. Non-negotiable. Understood. Unofficially. He looked away, jaw tight. I was wrong. About the Overwatch. About you. The words came out like pulling teeth. If I'd listened, we could have coordinated, made it cleaner, safer. Raven said nothing. But you didn't wait for that, did you? You saw a problem and solved it. Damn the consequences. Stone shook his head. I don't know if that makes you brave or insane. Maybe both. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Yeah, maybe both. He pulled something from his jacket, her rifle, freshly cleaned, the scope realigned. He held it out. We need you operational. Command wants you integrated into the team. Properly this time. Raven took the rifle, the weight familiar and grounding. What changed? Nothing. Everything. Stone looked back at the valley. I've been running this outpost my way for 18 months. Good men, solid tactics, zero tolerance for deviation. It worked, until it didn't. He met her eyes. You showed me there's another way. I don't have to like it, but I can't ignore it. And the men? The men will follow orders. Some of them might even start to trust you. He paused. But you have to meet them halfway, Cole. No more lone wolf operations. You want to be part of this team? You act like it. Raven considered that. Fair enough. Stone extended his hand. We good? She shook it. His grip was firm, calloused, the handshake of someone who'd earned every scar. We're good. Then let's get to work. Briefing in 30. Stone started back toward the command building, then stopped. One more thing. Sir? That shot, the counter sniper. 900 meters uphill, wind shear, moving target. His eyes narrowed. How the hell did you make it? Raven's expression didn't change. Practice. Bullshit. I've seen 100 snipers. None of them shoot like you. She met his gaze, steady and unflinching. Then maybe you've been working with the wrong snipers. Stone stared at her for a long moment, then shook his head. Yeah, maybe I have. He walked away. Raven stood alone at the perimeter, rifle in hand, wind pulling at her jacket. Below, the valley stretched endlessly, shadows and light playing across its surface like a living thing. Somewhere out there, more enemies waited. More fights, more chances to prove or disprove what everyone thought they knew about her. She chambered a round, smooth and practiced, then safetied the rifle. Let them watch. Let them doubt. She'd show them the truth one shot at a time. Mchaka. The briefing room felt different, smaller somehow. Or maybe it was just the way the men looked at her, not with hostility now, but something closer to wary curiosity, like she was a new variable in an equation they hadn't solved yet. Stone stood at the head of the table, Carter beside him with her tablet glowing. Briggs, Ortega, Hayes, Daniels, all present. Webb leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, watching. "Listen up," Stone began. "Intelligence confirms increased enemy activity in sectors 8 and 9. They're moving weapons through the valley, likely in response to yesterday's engagement." He nodded to Carter, who pulled up satellite imagery. Raven studied the photos. Thermal signatures clustered near cave entrances, supply routes carved into the hillsides, defensive positions that would make a frontal assault suicidal. "Our mission is surveillance and interdiction," Stone continued. "We identify supply caches, track movement patterns, and relay targeting data to air support." He looked directly at Raven. "Commander Cole will provide long-range overwatch. Daniels, you're her spotter." Daniels straightened, eyes wide. "Me? You wanted to learn from the best. Here's your chance." Stone's tone left no room for argument. "Briggs, Ortega, Hayes, you're on patrol. Standard sweep pattern. Maintain radio contact. Webb, you're with me coordinating from base." "Oh," Briggs shifted in his seat. "What's the ROE?" "Weapons free on confirmed hostiles. Avoid civilian contact. If things go sideways, fall back and call for support." Stone's gaze swept the room. "We do this smart. We do this together. Questions?" Ortega raised a hand. "What if we encounter another counter-sniper?" The room went quiet. Stone looked at Raven. "Commander?" All eyes turned to her. She leaned back in her chair, fingers steepled. "You won't encounter them. They'll encounter you. And if they're smart, they'll take the shot before you know they're there." "Comforting," Hayes muttered. "Wasn't meant to be." Raven's expression was flat. "Counter-snipers don't play fair. They wait. They watch. They learn your patterns, your habits, your mistakes. Then they exploit them." "So what's the counter?" Daniels asked. "Don't have patterns, don't repeat routes, don't get predictable." She paused. "And if you think someone's watching you, they probably are. Move," Briggs snorted. "You make it sound like we're already dead." "You're not dead. You're just targets. There's a difference." Raven stood, moving to the map. "The enemy sniper I engaged yesterday was professional. Military trained, patient, disciplined. That means there are more. And they're learning from their losses." Stone nodded grimly. "Which is why we adapt. No heroics, no unnecessary risks. We execute the mission and come home." He looked at each of them in turn. "Clear?" A chorus of affirmatives. "Good. Wheels up in 1 hour. Dismissed." The men filed out. Raven gathered her notes, but Stone caught her arm. "A word." She waited. Stone lowered his voice. "Daniels is green. Eager, but green. Keep him alive." "I'll keep him useful. Alive is up to him." "Cole." "He volunteered for this, Major. I'll teach him what I can. But out there, mistakes get punished fast. He needs to understand that." Stone's grip tightened. "Just try not to break him, okay?" Raven's lips quirked. "No promises." The helicopter carved through thin air, rotors thundering, the valley spreading below like a wrinkled map. Raven sat across from Daniels, watching him check and recheck his gear, rangefinder, notepad, binoculars, radio. His hands were steady, but his eyes gave him away, nervous, excited, scared. She leaned forward, voice cutting through the engine noise. "First time in Overwatch?" Daniels nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "What do you know about spotting?" Call win, distance, adjustments, mark targets, keep the shooter informed. That's the basics. Want to know the hard part?" He swallowed. "What's the hard part?" "Staying calm when everything goes to hell." Raven held his gaze. "Out there, you're my second set of eyes. If you panic, I miss. If I miss, people die. Understand?" "Yes, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am. Call me Raven. We're partners now." Daniels blinked, then nodded. "Okay, Raven." "Good." She sat back. "Now tell me, what's your biggest fear?" The question caught him off guard. My
Fear? Everyone's got one. What's yours? Daniels hesitated, then spoke quietly. Freezing. When it matters. I'm afraid I'll just lock up. You will. His eyes widened. What? You'll freeze. At some point, your brain will hit overload and your body will stop responding. It happens to everyone. Raven leaned forward again. The question is what you do after. Do you stay frozen or do you push through? How do you push through? Training, repetition, muscle memory. She tapped her temple. And accepting that fear is just information. It tells you you're in danger. What you do with that information is up to you. Daniels nodded slowly, absorbing that. The pilot's voice crackled through the headset. 2 minutes to drop zone. Raven stood, checking her rifle one last time. Stay close. Watch everything. And if I tell you to move, you move. No questions, no hesitation. Got it. They jumped out into wind and dust, the helicopter lifting away immediately. The ridge stretched before them, rocky, exposed, offering both opportunity and danger in equal measure. Raven moved uphill, Daniels following. They found a position overlooking the valley, 800 meters to the nearest cave entrance, clear sightlines, multiple egress routes. Here, Raven said, dropping to her stomach. Daniels followed suit, pulling out his rangefinder. Ranging targets, he muttered, scanning the valley. Cave entrance, 815 meters. Supply route, 900 meters. Rock formation. Don't just call numbers. Tell me what matters. Daniels paused, thinking. Cave entrance is the primary choke point. Any movement there, we see it first. Good. What else? Wind's shifting. Southwest, maybe 10 knots. Temperature's dropping. Air's getting denser. Better? Raven settled behind her scope, adjusting for elevation. Keep talking. I need constant updates. For the next hour, they worked in silence, broken only by Daniel's whispered observations. Raven watched the valley, watched the shadows, watched for anything that didn't belong, then movement. Contact, Daniels whispered. Cave entrance. 3 individuals, armed, a K-pattern rifles. Raven found them in her scope. 3 men, moving casually, no tactical discipline. Smugglers, maybe. Or lookouts. Range? 820, wind southwest, 11 knots. Raven calculated, adjusted. Her finger rested on the trigger guard, not the trigger. Not yet. The radio crackled. Briggs's voice. Overwatch, this is Patrol 1. We have eyes on the same targets. Request clearance. Stone's voice cut in. Negative. Observe only. Do not engage unless fired upon. Raven kept her crosshairs steady. The men below were laughing about something, gesturing animatedly. Oblivious. Then one of them stopped, turned, looked directly up at the ridge. Raven's pulse didn't change, didn't flinch, just watched. The man said something to his companions. They all looked up now, scanning, searching. Daniels tensed. They see us. They see something, not us. How do you know? Because we're still alive. The men below conferred briefly, then moved back into the cave, disappearing like smoke. Briggs's voice again. Overwatch. Targets are RTB. What's your read? Raven keyed her mic. They're spooked. Either they spotted something or someone warned them. Could be a patrol, Stone said. Or a radio intercept. Stay sharp. Raven scanned the opposite ridge, looking for anomalies. Movement. Reflections. Anything. There. A glint of metal, 900 meters out. Just for a second, then gone. Her blood went cold. Daniels, northeast ridge. Check it. He swung his binoculars. I don't see it. Look harder. Seconds ticked by. Then Daniel's breath caught. Oh, shit. Is that scope reflection? Someone's watching us. Raven's voice was ice. And they know we're here. The valley suddenly felt a lot smaller. Daniel's voice shook. What do we do? We don't panic. Raven shifted her position slightly, never taking her eye from the scope. Call it in. Daniels keyed his radio. Command, Overwatch. We have possible hostile observer on the northeast ridge. Recommend immediate relocation. Stone's response was instant. Copy. Hold position. We're pulling Patrol 1 back. Stay low. Raven didn't move. Couldn't move. If the enemy sniper was watching, any significant motion would confirm their position. It became a game of patience, of nerves. Minutes crawled by. The sun climbed higher, heat rippling across the rocks. Sweat dripped down Raven's spine, but she didn't wipe it away.
didn't blink. Then, movement. Not on the ridge. In the valley. A vehicle rolled into view, old pickup truck, bed loaded with crates. 4 men, heavily armed, dismounting near the cave entrance. Daniels whispered, "New contacts." Raven tracked them through her scope. Professional, disciplined, not smugglers. "Fighters," she murmured. "Well trained." One of them carried a radio. He spoke into it, then pointed directly at Raven's position. Her stomach dropped. "They know exactly where we are," she said. "We're compromised." Before Daniels could respond, the world exploded. Rounds snapped overhead. Crack, crack, crack. Chewing the rocks behind them to shrapnel. Raven rolled left, dragging Daniels with her, both of them scrambling for cover as bullets stitched the ridge. "Move!" Raven shouted. "Go! Go! Go!" They slid down the backside of the ridge, rocks scraping hands and knees, the thunder of gunfire chasing them. Raven's mind raced. Enemy had the high ground, knew their position, had them pinned. The radio screamed with overlapping voices. Stone, Briggs, Carter, all shouting over each other. Raven keyed her mic. "Overwatch is compromised. Enemy has our position. We're falling back to secondary." "Negative," Stone's voice was sharp. "Patrol 1 is under fire. They need suppression." Raven skidded to a stop. Below, through the rocks, she could see muzzle flashes. Briggs and the others pinned down, enemy fighters advancing on their position. Daniels grabbed her arm. "We have to go." Raven looked at him, looked at the valley, at the men who were about to die. She made a choice. "Get to cover, call in our position, tell Stone we're engaging." "Are you insane? They'll kill us." "They'll kill them first." Raven shoved him toward a boulder. "Move." She scrambled back up the ridge, ignoring the bullets, ignoring the fear screaming in her brain. She found a crack in the rocks. Narrow, barely enough room, but it would work. She dropped prone, brought her rifle up, found the first target. The fighter advancing on Briggs's position never saw it coming. Crack. He dropped. Raven chambered another round. Second target. Third. The enemy scattered, shouting, trying to find her, but she'd chosen her position well. Narrow field of fire, minimal exposure, perfect line to the kill zone. She was a ghost, a phantom, death from nowhere. Below, Briggs and his team used the confusion to fall back, returning fire as they moved. The radio crackled. Stone's voice tight with something that might have been respect. "Overwatch, you magnificent crazy." The world went white. The explosion hit like a freight train, concussive force slamming Raven backward. Her ears rang, couldn't hear, couldn't think. She blinked, vision swimming, smoke everywhere, dust, blood on her hands. Whose blood? Daniels appeared beside her, face pale, shouting something she couldn't hear. He grabbed her rifle, her gear, hauling her to her feet. They ran. Bullets chased them down the ridge, through the rocks, into the labyrinth of stone and shadow that was the only thing keeping them alive. Raven's hearing came back in stages, first just ringing, then muffled explosions, then finally voices. "Extraction point, Bravo! Repeat, fall back to Bravo!" She stumbled, caught herself, kept moving. Daniels was beside her, face streaked with dirt, eyes wide but steady. "You okay?" he shouted. "Define okay," Raven gasped. Behind them, the firefight raged, but they were clear, for now. They reached the extraction point, a flat clearing 2 clicks from the ridge. The helicopter was already inbound, rotors a distant thunder growing louder. Briggs and the others appeared from the rocks, moving fast, firing over their shoulders. Ortega was limping, Hayes supporting him. The helicopter touched down. They piled in, the bird lifting off even before the door was closed. Raven collapsed against the bulkhead, chest heaving. Daniels sat beside her, hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Stone's voice crackled through the headset. "Overwatch, Patrol 1. Sit rep." Briggs responded, breathless. "All accounted for." "Ortega took shrapnel, non-critical. We're RTB. Copy." "Good work." A pause. "All of you." Raven closed her eyes. Her hands were steady again, always steady. But somewhere in the valley behind them, the enemy was watching, learning. And next time, they'd be ready. The debriefing was quick, clinical. Casualty count, 0 friendly, 8 confirmed enemy KIA. Material damage, minimal. Mission status, compromised but successful. Stone dismissed the men but asked Raven to stay. When the room cleared, he turned to her. "That was close." Always is. We're going to have to rethink our approach. They're adapting faster than expected. Stone pulled up a map. I want you to start training the others. Counter-surveillance, advanced positioning, anti-sniper tactics. Raven raised an eyebrow. You trust me with that? I trust results. And today, you got results. He met her eyes. But I need you to understand something, Cole. You keep pulling off impossible shots. People are going to start asking questions. What kind of questions? The kind that dig into your past. Into where you learned to shoot like that. Into who trained you. Stone's gaze hardened. And I get the feeling you don't want those questions answered. Raven's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind her eyes. My past is classified. I know. I tried to access your full file. Got stonewalled by 3 different agencies. Stone crossed his arms. So I'll ask you directly. What aren't you telling me? For a long moment, Raven said nothing. Then she stood, moving to the window. The valley stretched endlessly below, shadows lengthening as the sun dropped toward the horizon. I was part of a program, she said quietly. Long-range interdiction, deep cover, the kind of work that doesn't make reports. Black ops. Blacker than black. She didn't turn around. For 5 years, I didn't exist. No name, no rank, no record, just targets and timelines. How many? Enough. Stone absorbed that. And then? And then the program ended. I came back. They gave me a name again, a rank, a fresh start. She finally looked at him. But you don't forget that kind of work, Major. It stays with you. Is that why you shoot like that? Why you move like that? That's why I survive. Raven's voice was flat. Out there, second place is a body bag. So you train until there's no second place. Just first, or dead. Stone nodded slowly. And the enemy snipers? What about them? You recognize their tactics, their discipline, like you've seen it before. Raven's jaw tightened. Because I have. Some of the people I've faced, they came from programs like mine. Different countries, same training, same job. She paused. We're all ghosts, Major. The only difference is whose flag we're haunting under. The silence stretched. Outside, the compound settled into evening routines, guard changes, chow lines, the mechanical rhythm of a military base at the edge of nowhere. Finally, Stone spoke. I won't dig. Your secrets are yours. But if there's anything I need to know, anything that could compromise this team, you tell me. Clear? Clear? Good. He moved toward the door, then stopped. For what it's worth, Cole, I'm glad you're on our side. Raven almost smiled. So am I, Major. So am I. He left. Raven stood alone in the empty room, watching the darkness swallow the valley. Her reflection stared back from the window. Hard eyes, scarred hands, a face that had seen too much and said too little. Somewhere out there, another sniper was waiting. Another ghost from another program, sent to do the same impossible job she'd been doing her whole life. And when they met again, only one would walk away. She touched the window glass, cold against her fingertips. Come find me, she whispered to the darkness. Let's see who's better. The valley offered no answer, just whined in silence and the weight of battles yet to come. The darkness outside her window held no answers, only questions that multiplied with each passing hour. Raven pressed her forehead against the cold glass, her breath fogging the surface in shallow clouds. Behind her, the barracks room felt smaller than ever, 4 walls and a ceiling that seemed to press down with the weight of everything unsaid. A distant explosion rolled across the valley like thunder. She counted the seconds, 7 kilometers out, maybe 8. Someone else's fight, someone else's problem. For now. She turned from the window and reached for her rifle, muscle memory guiding her hands through the disassembly even in the dark. Bolt carrier group, firing pin, trigger assembly, each piece coming apart like a puzzle she'd solved 1,000 times before. The routine calmed her, gave her something concrete to focus on while her mind worked through the larger problem. The enemy knew their tactics now, knew their positions, their patterns, their weaknesses. And somewhere out there, a counter-sniper with training that matched her own was studying those patterns, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. A professional would be patient, would take time, would wait for the high-value target that justified the risk, which meant Raven had maybe 48 hours before the next move. She was reassembling the trigger group when boots echoed in the hallway outside. Not the steady rhythm of guards changing shifts. These were running, urgent, accompanied by shouts that cut through the night like knives. Raven had her rifle assembled and was moving toward the door before her conscious mind registered the alarm. She stepped into the hallway just as Webb came sprinting around the corner, face pale, eyes wide. "Commander! Command Center! Now! Stone wants everyone—" "What happened?" "Recon drone went down over Sector 10. Last transmission showed enemy convoy, heavy weapons, vehicles, at least 40 hostiles moving through the valley." Raven was already running. "When?" 18 minutes ago. Stone's assembling a response team." They burst into the command center together. The room was controlled chaos. Carter hunched over her console, fingers flying across keyboards. Stone bent over a tactical display with Briggs and Ortega flanking him. Hayes stood near the radio array, headset clamped to his ears, his face grave. Stone looked up as Raven entered. "Commander?" "Good. Look at this." She moved to the display. Drone footage, grainy and thermal enhanced, showed a column of vehicles snaking through a narrow canyon. Trucks, jeeps, what looked like a technical with a heavy machine gun mounted in the bed. The timestamp read 0342 hours, 16 minutes ago. "How many?" Raven asked. "Minimum 40 combatants," Carter said, not looking up from her screen. "Could be more. Convoy stopped here." She highlighted a section of the map. "At this cave system. Been there for the last 14 minutes. "Resupply point," Briggs muttered. "Has to be. That's where we've been tracking weapons movements." Stone straightened. "Command wants them hit, hard, before they disperse back into the population." "Air support?" Raven asked. "Negative. Weather front moving in, ceilings dropping, visibility's shit. No birds flying for at least 6 hours." Stone's jaw clenched. "We're on our own." Ortega shook his head. 40 hostiles in fortified positions? We've got what, 12 effectives? That's suicide. "Not if we're smart." Stone traced a finger along the map. "Canyon walls provide natural funneling. We set up kill zones here and here, force them into a crossfire." "They'll see it coming," Raven interrupted. "Professionals don't get ambushed in obvious choke points. They'll send scouts, check the high ground, clear the approaches. By the time we spring the trap, they'll be ready." Stone's eyes narrowed. "What's your alternative?" Raven studied the map, her mind calculating angles, distances, timing. The canyon was a natural fortress, high walls, limited entry points, perfect defensive terrain. A conventional assault would be a bloodbath, but there was another option. She pointed to a ridgeline overlooking the cave entrance. "Sniper nest, 1,200 meters, elevated position, complete coverage of the target area." 1,200 meters? Hayes looked incredulous. "That's extreme range, I know." Raven's finger moved across the map. "But it's doable. I take the nest, provide suppressing fire. You hit them from the canyon floor while they're pinned, force them into a kill box they don't see coming." Briggs snorted. "One shooter against 40 targets? You're dreaming." "I don't need to kill 40. I need to kill the right 10. Raven's voice was ice. "Take out their leadership, their heavy weapons operators, their drivers. The rest will break. And if they don't, then you extract and I cover your withdrawal." Stone studied her, the tactical display casting harsh shadows across his face. "You're talking about holding that position alone. No backup, no support. If they flank you, they won't." "You can't know that." "Yes," Raven said quietly. "I can." The room went silent. Carter stopped typing. Hayes lowered his headset. Every eye turned to Raven, waiting. Stone leaned back against the table, arms crossed. "Convince me." Raven met his gaze. "The enemy thinks in patterns. They know we've been running conventional ops, patrols, recon teams, standard tactics. They're ready for that. What they're not ready for is a single operator executing precision strikes from extreme range." She paused. "It's not what they expect. And in combat, the unexpected is the most powerful weapon you have. Or the fastest way to get killed. Maybe. But it's also the only way 40 of them don't walk out of that canyon tonight." Stone looked at Briggs, at Ortega, at Carter. Reading their faces, measuring their doubts against the impossible math of the situation. Finally, he nodded. "We do it your way, but you take Daniels as your spotter." "No. That's not negotiable, Commander. You don't go alone." Raven wanted to argue, but she saw the steel in Stone's eyes. This was the compromise. Take it or lose the mission entirely. "Fine. but he follows my lead, no questions. Agreed. Stone turned to the room. Wheels up in 20 minutes. Carter, I want real-time drone coverage if you can get it. Hayes, monitor all enemy comms. If they sneeze, I want to know about it. The room exploded into motion. Men grabbing gear, checking weapons, running through pre-combat rituals that had kept them alive this long. Raven found Daniels near the armory, loading magazines with hands that shook just slightly. "You ready for this?" she asked. He looked up, swallowing hard. "Honestly?" "Terrified." "Good. Fear keeps you sharp." She grabbed her own ammunition, began loading. "Stay close, stay quiet, and when I tell you to move, you move. Clear?" "Clear." Webb appeared beside them, handing Raven a radio headset. "Encrypted channel. Command wants you on the net the whole time." "Copy." Raven fitted the headset, adjusting the mic. "How's your Mandarin?" Webb blinked. "My what?" "Never mind." She slung her rifle over her shoulder, secured her sidearm. "If things go sideways tonight, you make sure Carter gets all my notes. Everything I've observed about enemy tactics, counter-sniper protocols, all of it." "Why are you talking like—" "Just do it, Webb." His face went pale, but he nodded. "Yes, ma'am." Raven clapped him on the shoulder once, brief, human, then moved toward the helicopter pad. Behind her, the command center hummed with controlled urgency. Men preparing to run toward death with nothing but training and trust to guide them. She'd seen it before. Too many times. The question was always the same. Who would come back? The helicopter insertion was surgical. Fast, low, lights out. They dropped Raven and Daniels on the backside of the ridge, 3 kilometers from the target zone, then banked hard toward the staging area where Stone and the assault team would wait for her signal. The night swallowed the helicopter's sound within seconds. Raven knelt in the darkness, letting her eyes adjust. Beside her, Daniels breathed steady but quick, adrenaline already working through his system. 2 clicks to the nest, she whispered. 30 minutes if we're careful, 20 if we push. We pushing? We're pushing. She stood, checking her compass, orienting to the terrain. Stay 5 meters behind me. Watch where I step. Don't use your light. They moved through the darkness like ghosts. The terrain was brutal, loose rock, sudden drop-offs, thorny scrub that tore at clothing and skin. But Raven navigated it with the certainty of someone who'd made similar approaches 100 times before. Muscle memory. Pattern recognition. The ability to read terrain in the dark like others read books in daylight. 15 minutes in, Daniel stumbled. Not badly, just a scrape of boot on stone. But in the absolute silence of the mountains, it sounded like a gunshot. Raven froze, raised a fist. Daniel stopped mid-step, not even breathing. They waited. 30 seconds, a minute, 2. No shouts, no lights, no indication they'd been heard. Raven lowered her fist and kept moving. They reached the ridgeline with 5 minutes to spare. The position was exactly what the map promised, a natural shelf of rock overlooking the canyon, with sight lines that stretched for miles. Below, the cave entrance was a dark mouth in the cliff face. Vehicles clustered around it like insects around carrion. Raven dropped to her stomach, pulling out her rifle. Daniel sat up beside her with the rangefinder and spotting scope. "Range to cave entrance," Raven whispered. 1205 meters, wind northwest, 8 knots, temperature 22 degrees and dropping. Count hostiles. Daniel scanned through his scope, lips moving silently. 32 visible, 15 near the vehicles, 10 at the cave entrance, 7 on perimeter patrol. He paused. "Wait. Movement inside the cave. Can't get a clean count. Estimate. 10 more. Maybe 12. But Raven did the math. 44 minimum. Long odds, even for her. She keyed her radio. Overwatch in position. Count 44 hostiles, heavily armed, defensive posture. Recommend delayed engagement until targets cluster. Stone's voice crackled back. Copy, Overwatch. Assault team is holding at staging point Charlie. Your call on timing. Raven settled into her rifle, eye to the scope, watching, waiting. Below, the enemy moved with professional efficiency. No wasted motion, no casual behavior. These weren't militia or insurgents playing soldier. These were trained fighters. They're organized, Daniels whispered. Really organized. I see it. Raven tracked one figure, taller than the others, moving between groups, gesturing, clearly giving orders. The leader. Mark the target, northwest corner near the technical.
Marked? That's... Holy shit, that's command staff. You see the insignia?
Raven zoomed in. The figure wore a tactical vest laden with radios and electronics. Command and control. Take him out? The operation fell apart. But he was surrounded. 12 other fighters within 10 meters, all armed, all alert. One shot won't be enough, Daniels said. You take him, everyone scatters. Assault team won't have time to capitalize. He was right. Raven needed to create chaos, not just remove one target. She needed to make them panic, bunch up, expose themselves. She scanned the vehicles. The technical with its heavy machine gun. The fuel truck. Wait, fuel truck. Daniels, the second vehicle from the left. What is it? He adjusted his scope. Looks like fuel transport. Diesel, probably. They're offloading drums into the cave. Raven's mind raced. A fuel truck, 44 hostiles packed into a confined space, one shot placed exactly right. How's your chemistry? She asked. Past high school? Good enough. She adjusted her scope, lining up the shot. Diesel doesn't explode like gasoline, but under the right conditions, high heat, confined space, aerosolized particles, it can create a fuel-air explosion. Daniels went very still. You're not serious. One round, armor-piercing, into the fuel tank. Pressurized spray, open flame from the cave entrance, enclosed space. She calculated wind, distance, angle. Boom! That's insane. You'd kill half of them. That's the point. But Daniels... Raven's voice cut like a blade. This isn't a training exercise. This is war. They came here to kill us, to kill people we're protecting. I'm giving them exactly what they brought to the fight. Daniels swallowed hard. Okay. What do you need? Eyes on that truck. The second I fire, you call impact and track survivors. Clear? Clear. Raven settled behind the rifle. 1,200 meters. Northwest wind, 8 knots. Temperature 22 and dropping, which meant air density increasing, which meant bullet trajectory arcing higher than standard calculations. She adjusted. Breathed. Let her heartbeat slow to a crawl. The crosshairs settled on the fuel tank, a thin-skinned metal container 3 feet tall, filled with volatile diesel. Ready, she whispered. Wand holding steady. Range 1205, clear shot. Raven's finger moved to the trigger. The world narrowed to crosshairs and breathing and the impossible distance between barrel and target. She exhaled halfway. Held. Squeezed. The rifle kicked. The sound cracked across the valley, echoing off canyon walls. For one frozen second, nothing happened. Then the fuel tank erupted. Not an explosion, a spray, a pressurized fountain of diesel mist catching the light from the cave entrance, igniting in a rolling wave of orange flame that swallowed the vehicle and everyone near it. The secondary explosion came 3 seconds later when the fuel reached the cave entrance and the confined space turned the mist into a bomb. The shockwave was visible even at 1,200 meters, a rolling wall of pressure that blew out across the canyon, flipping vehicles, throwing bodies like rag dolls. Daniels's voice was barely a whisper. Jesus Christ. Raven was already chambering the next round. Count survivors. I'm seeing chaos. They're scattered. Daniel struggled to focus through the smoke and flame. Maybe 20 still standing. No, 15. They're falling back to mark targets. Technical, 11 o'clock, 2 hostiles mounting the gun. Raven found them, leading the first by a fraction. Fired. The gunner dropped. Second target, same position. Crack. Down. 3 hostiles breaking northeast toward the assault team's position. Raven tracked them, compensated for movement, fired 3 times in succession. 3 shots. 3 bodies. The remaining enemy fighters were in full retreat now, scrambling for cover, firing blindly into the darkness. No coordination, no leadership, just panic. Stone's voice crackled through the radio. Overwatch, we're engaging. All units, weapons free. Gunfire erupted from the canyon floor. The assault team hit the disorganized enemy from 3 directions, catching them in a crossfire they never saw coming. Raven provided overwatch, picking off anyone who tried to rally, anyone who looked like they might organize a defense. Her rifle became a metronome. Crack, chamber, aim, crack. Each shot deliberate, each impact final. Daniels called targets, his voice steadier now, finding rhythm in the chaos. 6 o'clock, hostile with RPG. Crack. 3 more breaking east. Crack, crack, Crack. The firefight lasted 4 minutes. When the smoke cleared, the canyon floor was silent except for the crackle of burning vehicles and the distant shouts of Stone's team securing the area. Raven safetied her rifle, sitting back from the scope. Her hands were rock steady, always steady. Daniels lowered his spotting scope, face pale. We just killed. Don't count them, Raven said quietly. It doesn't help. How do you do it? How do you just turn it off? I don't. She looked at him, and for just a moment, the mask slipped. I just don't let it stop me from doing the job. The radio crackled, Stone's voice, rough but triumphant. Overwatch, assault team, area secure, 41 enemy KIA, 3 captured for interrogation, 0 friendly casualties. A pause. That was one hell of a shot, Commander. Raven keyed her mic. Just math, Major. That wasn't math, that was art. Stone's voice carried something new, not just respect, but something closer to awe. Get back to base. Drinks are on me. Copy. Overwatch out. She stood, slinging her rifle. Let's move. They made the return journey in silence. Daniels kept looking at her like she was something alien, something he couldn't quite categorize or understand. The helicopter picked them up 40 minutes later. As they lifted off, Raven looked back at the canyon, at the burning vehicles, the smoke rising like a funeral pyre against the dawn. 41 enemies who would never threaten another outpost, never kill another soldier, never plant another bomb. The math was simple, but the weight of it never got lighter. The base was transformed when they returned. Men who'd ignored her before now stepped aside as she passed. Conversations stopped, eyes followed. Stone met her at the helicopter pad, hand extended. Commander? She shook it. Major? That fuel truck shot. 1,200 meters in the dark. He shook his head slowly. I've been in this business 20 years, never seen anything like it. It was the right shot at the right time. It was impossible. Stone gestured toward the command center. Debrief in 10. And Cole? Sir? You just saved a lot of lives, mine included. I won't forget that. Raven nodded once and headed toward the barracks. She needed to clean her rifle, check her gear, write up the after-action report. The routine, the ritual. Carter intercepted her halfway across the compound. Commander, I need to show you something. Can it wait? No. Carter's expression was grave. We pulled data from the downed drone before the engagement. There's footage you need to see. They detoured to Carter's workstation in the communication center. The specialist pulled up a video file, thermal imaging showing the enemy convoy approaching the canyon. What am I looking for? Raven asked. Watch the 4th vehicle, the SUV. Raven watched. The SUV stopped briefly at a checkpoint, someone exiting and speaking to the guards. The thermal signature was different from the others. Cooler body temperature, deliberate movement patterns. Professional. Carter zoomed in, enhancing the image. Thermal imaging suggests this individual is wearing advanced kit. Maybe body armor with cooling systems, maybe something else. She paused. But watch what happens next. The figure moved to the ridgeline overlooking the canyon, set up a position. A rifle appeared in thermal outline, long-barreled precision equipment. A sniper's nest. Watching the same target area Raven had just destroyed. They had Overwatch, Raven said quietly. Yeah, and here's the thing. Carter pulled up another image, a freeze frame from moments before the fuel truck explosion. This was captured by one of our helmet cams during the assault. The image showed a muzzle flash from a distant ridge, not from Raven's position, from the northeast, the enemy sniper, taking a shot at the exact moment Raven had fired. They were targeting you, Carter said. Or trying to. Shot went wide. You'd already moved to secondary position. But if you'd stayed in your primary nest, Raven studied the image. The angle of the shot, the timing, the precision. This wasn't a random fighter. This was the same professional she'd dueled with before. And they'd almost succeeded. Where's the shooter now? Raven asked. Unknown. Lost them in the chaos of the assault. Could be anywhere. Carter met her eyes. They're hunting you specifically, Commander. This is personal for them. Good. Raven's voice was flat. Makes it easier. Easier how? Predictable. If they want me, they'll come. And when they come, I'll be ready. Carter looked like she wanted to argue, but footsteps in the hallway cut her off. Briggs appeared, face flushed, eyes hard. Command wants you. Now. Raven turned. What's wrong? Stone just got orders from command. High priority tasking. Classified. Briggs' expression was unreadable. You're not going to like it. They moved through the base in tense silence. The command center was locked down, guards at the door, windows blacked out. Whatever was happening, it was need to know only. Stone stood at the tactical display with two officers Raven didn't recognize. Dress uniforms, no combat insignia. Brass from headquarters. Stone's face was granite. Commander Cole, these are Colonel Vance and Major Reeves from Strategic Operations Command. Vance was mid-50s, silver-haired, with the kind of bearing that came from decades of sending other people into the fire. Commander, your reputation precedes you. Sir? We have a situation. Vance pulled up a satellite image, a compound deep in hostile territory, surrounded by mountains. 3 hours ago, a CIA intelligence team was compromised during a meeting with a high-value informant. 6 Americans currently held in this facility. Intel suggests they'll be executed within 48 hours unless we extract them. Raven studied the image. That's 80 kilometers into enemy territory. No friendly forces, no air support, completely surrounded. Correct, which is why conventional rescue is off the table. Vance looked at her directly. We need a different approach, something unconventional. The room went very quiet. Stone spoke, voice tight. They want you to provide overwatch for a direct action team. Insertion via helicopter, fast assault. You eliminate sentries and key targets from distance while the team breaches. That's suicide, Raven said flatly. You'd need perfect coordination, perfect timing, and perfect conditions. One mistake and everyone dies. We know. Vance's expression didn't change, which is why we're not asking for volunteers. We're giving you a direct order. You have operational command of this mission, Commander. Pick your team, plan your approach, execute as you see fit. But those 6 Americans come home. Clear? Raven looked at Stone. His face was unreadable, but his eyes said everything. This is wrong, this is dangerous, but we have no choice. She turned back to Vance. Timeline? Insertion at 0400 tomorrow. 15 hours to plan and prep. Extraction? You improvise. Rules of engagement? Weapons free. Minimize collateral damage, but mission success is the priority. Raven's mind was already racing through the variables. Distance, terrain, enemy strength, escape routes. The math was brutal, the odds worse. But 6 Americans were counting on someone to do the impossible, and apparently she was that someone. I'll need full tactical autonomy, no oversight, no second guessing. My plan, my call. Vance nodded. Granted. I want Daniels as my spotter, Webb on comms, and Stone leading the assault element. Stone's eyebrows shot up. Commander, you want this done right, Major? Then you're coming with me. No one knows this terrain better. No one I trust more to execute when it counts. She met his eyes. Unless you have a problem with that. Stone stared at her for a long moment. Then he straightened. No, ma'am. No problem. Good. Raven turned to Vance. We'll need satellite imagery updated every 30 minutes until insertion. Complete signal intelligence on enemy communications. And a weather forecast accurate to the hour. You'll have it. Then we have a mission. Raven moved to the tactical display, already analyzing angles and approaches. Someone get me coffee and clear this room. We've got 15 hours to plan the impossible. The officers filed out. Stone remained, watching her work. You know this is a trap, right? He said quietly. I know. They're using us to force out that enemy sniper, draw them into the open. I know. And you're still going. Raven looked up from the map, meeting his eyes. 6 Americans, Major. You'd do the same. Stone nodded slowly. Yeah, I would. He moved to her side, studying the compound layout. So how do we do this? Raven's finger traced a ridgeline 2 kilometers from the target. We don't go in the front door. We make them think we are, then hit them from where they least expect. Which is? Her finger moved to the satellite image, pointing at a sheer cliff face behind the compound. Here, straight up. They'll never see it coming. Stone looked at the cliff. At her. Back at the cliff. That's a 300-meter vertical climb. At night, in hostile territory. I know. That's insane.
That's why it'll work. Raven's eyes gleamed with something dangerous. They're expecting us to play it safe, to follow doctrine, to do what makes sense. And we're not? We're going to do what's necessary. She began marking positions on the map, her mind already 3 steps ahead. Call the team. We've got work to do. Stone headed for the door, then paused. Cole? Yeah? When this is over, if we survive, remind me never to bet against you. She almost smiled. Deal. The door closed. Raven stood alone in the command center, surrounded by maps and satellite images and the weight of an impossible mission. 6 lives depending on her, a team trusting her, an enemy sniper somewhere in the darkness, waiting. She looked down at her hands, still steady, always steady. Come on then, she'd whispered to the empty room. Let's see who breaks first. Outside, the sun was setting on what might be the last day any of them saw. And in the mountains, death was already choosing her positions. The planning room filled slowly over the next hour. Stone brought his core team, Briggs, Ortega, Hayes. Webb set up communications equipment in the corner, headset already clamped over his ears, fingers flying across encryption protocols. Daniels arrived last, carrying topographical maps that he spread across the table without being asked. Raven stood at the head of the room, satellite imagery projected on the wall behind her. The compound glowed in infrared, a cluster of buildings surrounded by high walls, guard towers at each corner, a single road snaking in from the valley below. Listen up, she said, and the room went quiet. This isn't a standard extraction. The enemy knows we're coming. They've had 6 Americans for 3 hours now. That's enough time to reinforce, set traps, prepare a warm welcome. She zoomed the image to the cliff face, which is why we're not going where they expect. Briggs leaned forward, squinting. That's a sheer face. 300 meters, loose rock, no established route. Correct. We don't have climbers. We don't have equipment for a vertical insertion. We'll make do with what we have. Raven pulled up a second image, the compound's rear wall, barely 10 meters from the cliff edge. The wall is old construction, minimal security on this side because they think it's inaccessible. 2 guards maximum, probably bored, probably not expecting contact. Stone traced the route with his finger. So we climb in darkness, breach the rear wall, extract the hostages before they even know we're inside? That's phase 1. Raven switched to a wider view. Phase 2 is where it gets complicated. My overwatch position will be here, She marked a ridge 1,500 meters from the compound. Elevated, clear sight lines to the front gate, guard towers, and main courtyard. 1,500 meters, Hayes' voice cracked slightly. That's extreme range, I know. Raven's eyes were hard. But it's the only position that gives me coverage of both the compound and the valley approach. When the enemy realizes what's happening, they'll call reinforcements. I need to see them coming. Daniel studied the terrain. The wind patterns at that elevation, they'll be unpredictable, gusting, variable direction. Which is why you'll be with me, calling corrections in real time. Raven looked at him. Think you can handle it? He swallowed. Yes, ma'am. Good. She turned back to the map. Assault team. Stone, Briggs, Ortega, Hayes. You breach, secure the hostages, extract via the cliff route. I'll provide suppressing fire on any resistance, prioritizing threats to your position. And if reinforcements arrive before we're clear, Ortega asked, then I buy you time. Raven's voice was flat. Whatever it takes. Stone met her eyes. You're talking about holding off an entire enemy QRF alone. If necessary. That's not a plan. That's a suicide mission. It's the only mission that gets 6 Americans home alive. Raven leaned over the table, palms flat on the maps. You have a better idea, Major. Now's the time. The silence stretched. Stone looked at his men, reading their faces. Briggs looked skeptical. Ortega nervous. Hayes determined. All of them scared, but all of them willing. Finally, Stone nodded. We run it your way. But the second things go sideways, we adapt. No heroics, no last stands. We get in, get them out, get home. Agreed. Raven straightened. Webb, communication protocols? Webb looked up from his console. Encrypted burst transmissions only. Radio silence except for critical updates. I'll have drone coverage if the weather holds, but don't count on it. Backup extraction? Helicopter on standby at the border. 30 minutes out if we call them hot. Make it 20. I'll try. Raven turned to Daniels. Equipment check.
I need every piece of gear verified, double-checked, and ready to go. Rangefinder, ballistic computer, anemometer, night vision, all of it. On it. Daniels was already moving toward the armory. Briggs, Ortega, climbing equipment. Rope, carabiners, harnesses. Enough for 8 people on the descent. Briggs stood. We'll scrounge what we can. Don't scrounge, requisition. Tell supply this is priority alpha. Raven glanced at the clock on the wall. We insert in 13 hours. That gives us 12 to prep and 1 to pray we didn't miss anything. The team dispersed, moving with the controlled urgency of professionals who knew the clock was their enemy as much as the people they'd be fighting. Stone lingered as the room emptied. You really think we can pull this off? Raven looked at the satellite image, at the impossible terrain and the hostile compound and the 1,500 meters of nothing but wind and darkness between her rifle and the targets that needed to die. I think 6 people are counting on us to try. That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got, Major. Stone studied her for a long moment. When this is over, you and I are going to have a conversation about who you really are, about what you did before you came here. Maybe. Not maybe. Definitely. He moved toward the door, then paused. I've worked with a lot of snipers, Cole. Good ones. Some of the best in the world. But none of them shoot like you. None of them think like you. None of them carry themselves like someone who's been doing this since... He stopped, choosing his words. Since longer than your official record shows. Raven didn't respond. I'm right, aren't I? Your file's been sanitized, redacted. Whole sections of your life just... missing. Does it matter? It does if those missing sections are going to get my men killed. Raven turned to face him fully. Everything I've done, everything I know how to do, is about keeping people alive, Major. The specifics of where I learned it don't change that. But the specifics might explain why an enemy sniper is hunting you personally, why they're willing to expose themselves, take risks, just for a shot at you. Stone's eyes narrowed. What did you do, Cole? Who did you kill that made someone want you dead this badly? The question hung in the air like smoke. Finally, Raven spoke. There was a program, off-book, no congressional oversight, funded through black budgets that didn't officially exist. They recruited from special operations, people with specific skill sets, specific psychological profiles. People who could operate alone for months at a time without support, without backup, without anyone knowing they existed. Assassins. Operators, Raven's voice was ice. We didn't pick targets for politics or profit. We eliminated threats that couldn't be eliminated through conventional means. Warlords hiding behind human shields, arms dealers operating in neutral territories, people whose deaths made the world measurably safer. And the enemy sniper? Probably came from a similar program. Different country, same job, same training. She paused. We might have even crossed paths before. In the field, in the dark. 2 ghosts trying to complete missions that contradicted each other. Did you kill someone they cared about? Maybe. Or maybe they just know I'm the only threat that matters. Raven looked back at the map. When you're that good, Major, there's a short list of people who can actually stop you. We recognize each other, and when we meet, only one walks away. Stone absorbed that. So this mission is exactly what they've been waiting for. Me, exposed, providing overwatch from a fixed position. They'll come for me, and when they do, Raven's expression was unreadable. We'll see who's better, and if they are, if they get you first, then you extract the hostages and get home, mission complete. That's not acceptable. It's realistic. Raven moved to the door. Get your team ready, Major. Clock's ticking. She left him standing alone in the planning room, staring at maps that showed terrain but couldn't show the human cost of the decisions they were about to make. The armory hummed with activity. Daniels had spread every piece of equipment across 3 tables, checking serial numbers against inventory lists, testing batteries, verifying calibrations. He looked up as Raven entered. Rangefinder's good. Ballistic computers synced to your rifle's specs. Night vision. He held up the goggles. Generation 3. Thermal overlay, fully charged. Wind meter? Calibrated this morning. He handed it to her. But Commander, at 1,500 meters, wind's only part of the equation. Temperature gradients, humidity, even barometric pressure. They all affect bullet trajectory. I know. I'm just saying the margin for error is centimeters. I know. Raven took the equipment, checking each piece with practiced efficiency. Which is why you're going to be calling corrections in real time. I fire, you observe impact, you adjust my next shot. We iterate until I'm on target. And if we don't have time to iterate, then I make the first shot count. She looked at him. You scared? Terrified. Good. Use it. Fear sharpens focus. She handed him a headset. This is encrypted to my frequency. You talk, I listen. Keep it simple. Keep it clear. Wind speed, direction, target movement, nothing else. Daniels fitted the headset, adjusting the mic. What if something happens to you? If you're hit, if you can't shoot, then you take the rifle and finish the job. His eyes went wide. I can't. You can. You've been training for this since you arrived. You just don't know it yet. Raven pulled out her sidearm, checked the magazine, holstered it. Everyone has a moment when they discover what they're capable of. Tomorrow might be yours. Before Daniels could respond, Carter burst through the door, tablet in hand, face flushed. Commander, we've got a problem. Raven turned. Talk to me. Intel update just came through. Enemy reinforcements arrived at the compound 2 hours ago. Head count's now 40+ hostiles, including what looks like a specialized security detail. How specialized? Carter pulled up thermal footage. Body armor, advanced weapons, coordinated movement patterns. These aren't local fighters, Commander. These are professionals. Raven studied the footage. The new arrivals moved with military precision, spacing, hand signals, overlapping fields of fire. Whoever they were, they'd been trained by someone who knew what they were doing. Any indication they know about the rescue attempt? She asked. Hard to say, but the timing's suspicious. Either they anticipated we'd try something or... Carter hesitated. Or what? Or someone told them. The room went cold. Raven's mind raced. A leak. Someone feeding information to the enemy, which meant the mission was compromised before it even started. Who knows about the operation? She asked. Command staff? The assault team? Support personnel? Maybe 20 people total. Narrow it down. Anyone with unusual communication patterns, unexplained absences, anything that doesn't fit. Carter's fingers flew across her tablet. I'll pull comm logs, cross-reference with, do it fast, we insert in 12 hours. Raven turned to Daniels. Not a word about this to anyone. Understand? Yes, ma'am. Raven headed for the door, then stopped. Carter, one more thing. The enemy sniper. Any new intel? Carter shook her head. Nothing concrete. But there's chatter on intercepted comms. References to a special asset being deployed to the compound. Could be related. Keep monitoring. If you hear anything at all, you tell me immediately. Copy. Raven stepped out into the night. The base was quiet, most of the personnel already asleep or preparing for the mission. She walked to the perimeter, to the spot where she'd stood with Stone days earlier, looking out at the valley. The darkness was absolute. No moon, no stars, just the endless black of mountains and sky merged into one. Somewhere out there, an enemy sniper was preparing, cleaning their rifle, checking their gear, running through the same mental calculations Raven was running right now. 2 professionals, 2 ghosts from 2 different programs, both hunting each other across the same battlefield. Only one would survive tomorrow. Raven pulled out her rifle, the weight familiar and grounding. She field-stripped it by touch alone, checking each component, feeling for imperfections that might mean the difference between a clean shot and a miss. Everything was perfect, as always. She reassembled the weapon, chambered around, safetied it. Whoever you are, she whispered to the darkness, I'll see you tomorrow. The valley offered no response, just wind and silence and the promise of violence to come. 0300 hours came fast. The helicopter sat on the pad, rotors already spinning, pilot running through pre-flight checks. The assault team assembled in full kit, body armor, night vision, weapons loaded and secured. Webb manned the communications console, his face pale but determined. Stone approached Raven as she finished her final gear check. Team's ready? Equipment's verified? Weather's holding for now? Good. Raven slung her rifle across her back, secured her climbing harness. Rules of engagement? Weapons free on hostiles. Avoid civilian casualties. Minimal noise until contact is unavoidable. Stone paused. And Cole? Yeah? Bring them home, all of them, including yourself. That's the plan. They boarded the helicopter. The interior was cramped, filled with the smell of fuel and gun oil and human sweat. The team sat in 2 rows facing each other, checking and rechecking gear in the rhythmic motion of pre-combat ritual. Raven sat near the door, eyes closed, breathing steady, running through the mission in her mind. The climb, the breach, the shots she'd have to make, the variables that could kill them all. Daniel sat beside her, hands gripping his rifle too tight. She could feel his nervousness radiating like heat. "You good?" she asked without opening her eyes. "No." "Good. That means you're paying attention." She opened her eyes, looked at him. "When we get on that ridge, I need you focused. Not scared, not excited, just present. Can you do that?" "I'll try." "Don't try. Do." She pulled out a photograph from her vest pocket. 6 faces, the hostages they were risking everything to save. CIA officers, intelligence analysts, people with families waiting for them to come home. These people don't get to try. They don't get to hope. They get us. And we get one chance to do this right. Daniel stared at the photograph, then nodded slowly. "I understand." "Then let's get to work." The helicopter lifted off, banking hard toward the mountains. The base fell away below them, light shrinking to pinpricks in the darkness. The pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. 30 minutes to LZ, weather's deteriorating, winds picking up, visibility's dropping. Once we drop you, we're RTB, you'll be on your own. "Copy," Stone said. "Just get us there." The flight was brutal. Turbulence slammed them against the bulkheads, wind shear making the helicopter buck and yaw. Raven kept her eyes on the darkness beyond the door, watching the terrain rush past in shades of black and darker black. 20 minutes out, Webb's voice cut through the static. "Commander, update from Carter. Thermal imaging shows increased activity at the compound. They're mobilizing." Stone leaned forward. "Do they know we're coming?" "Can't confirm. Could be routine patrol rotation. Could be a trap." Raven finished the thought. "Tell Carter to keep eyes on that compound. Any change in posture, any movement toward defensive positions, we need to know." "Copy." The helicopter descended rapidly, stomach-dropping altitude loss that made several team members reach for sick bags. Then they were down, skids barely touching the ground, before Raven and Daniels jumped out. "Good hunting!" the pilot shouted. The helicopter lifted away immediately, disappearing into the darkness. Raven and Daniels stood alone on the mountainside, the assault team already moving toward their insertion point 2 kilometers east. The wind howled, tearing at their gear, making communication nearly impossible. Raven keyed her radio. "Overwatch moving to position? Radio check." Stone's voice came back scratchy but clear. "Good copy. Assault team is proceeding to phase line Alpha. Will advise when in position. Copy. Overwatch out." They climbed. The terrain was worse than the maps suggested. Loose scree that gave way under every step, sudden drop-offs hidden in darkness, wind that threatened to tear them off the mountain entirely. Raven moved by feel and instinct, finding handholds that shouldn't have existed, routes that didn't appear on any map. Daniel struggled behind her, breathing hard, gear rattling with each step. "Stay close," she called back. "Watch your footing." "Trying." An hour of brutal climbing brought them to the ridge. The position was everything Raven had hoped for, elevated, concealed by rocks, with clear sight lines to the compound 1,500 meters away. She deployed her rifle, settling into position. Daniel sat up beside her with the spotting scope and ballistic computer. "Range to compound," Raven ordered. 15-14 meters. Wind, shit, it's gusting. 12 knots northwest, but it's variable. Switching to 15, now back to 10. Temperature? Dropping. 18 degrees and falling. Raven made adjustments on her scope, calculating for the variables. At this range, every factor mattered. A 5-degree temperature change could shift her point of impact by inches. A 2-knot wind shift could turn a kill shot into a miss. She settled in, eye to scope, watching the compound come into focus. Guard towers. 4 visible. 2 guards per tower, all armed with automatic weapons. Courtyard. Main building. Smaller structures that might be barracks or storage. And there, thermal signatures in the central building. 6 separate heat sources, stationary, grouped together. The hostages. "I have eyes on the objective," Raven whispered into her radio. 6 thermal signatures, central building, ground floor. Stone's voice crackled back. "Copy. Assault team is at the cliff base. Beginning ascent now." "Understood. Overwatch is weapons free on hostile targets. Advise when you're breaching." "Will do." Raven watched through her scope as the assault team began their climb. Tiny figures scaling the cliff face, moving slowly, carefully, every handhold a potential disaster. 15 minutes passed. 20. Then movement in the compound. A guard on the north tower turned, looking toward the cliff, reached for his radio. "Contact," Raven whispered. "North tower guard is alerting. Permission to engage? Stand by." The guard was already talking into his radio, gesturing toward the cliff. Raven made a decision. She fired. The suppressed shot was barely a whisper, but the impact was final. The guard dropped, radio clattering from lifeless hands. The compound exploded into motion. Lights flooded the courtyard. Doors burst open. Armed fighters poured out like ants from a disturbed nest. Stone's voice was sharp. "Overwatch, what the hell?" North Tower guard spotted the assault team. "He's down, but they know we're here." Raven was already chambering the next round. "Recommend you accelerate the breach, now." "Copy. All units. Weapons free. Go! Go! Go!" The world erupted. Muzzle flashes lit the compound as guards opened fire blindly toward the cliff. The assault team returned fire, their suppressed weapons creating a staccato rhythm against the chaos. Raven worked methodically. South Tower, 2 guards. Crack. Crack. Both down. East Tower, 3 guards, 1 with an RPG. Crack. The RPG operator dropped. Crack. Crack. The other 2 followed. Daniels called corrections. Wind shift, northwest to west-northwest, 14 knots. Adjust 2 mils right. Raven adjusted. Found a fighter organizing a defensive line in the courtyard. Fired. He dropped. The enemy was scattering now, taking cover, trying to locate the shooter. They were professionals. They knew they were being hunted from distance, knew to keep moving, knew to use cover, but they didn't know where she was. And that made all the difference. Stone's voice crackled through the chaos. "We're inside. Moving to the hostages. Copy. I'll suppress the courtyard." Raven shifted her aim, targeting anyone who moved toward the central building. Crack, crack, crack. Bodies dropped with mechanical precision. Then, movement on the opposite ridge. A glint of metal. A shape that didn't belong. Raven's blood turned to ice. "Daniels, northeast ridge, check it." He swung his scope. "I see. Oh, shit. Sniper position. They're setting up. They're..." The world exploded beside Raven's head. Rock shards tore through the air. She rolled left, instinct overriding thought, another round cracking past her ear. The enemy sniper had found her. "Move!" she shouted at Daniels. "Get to secondary position!" They scrambled through the rocks as bullets chased them, precise and relentless. Raven dove behind a boulder, breathing hard, mind racing. The enemy sniper was good, very good. Accurate enough to force her out of her position, disciplined enough not to waste ammunition on shots that wouldn't land, which meant they were hunting her specifically, waiting for her to expose herself. Stone's voice cut through the radio. "Overwatch, we have the hostages, moving to extraction." "Negative." Raven keyed her mic, staying low. "Courtyard's still hot. You'll be cut down." "We don't have a choice. Building's compromised. They're coming for us." Raven looked at the compound, at the assault team trapped inside, at the enemies converging on their position, at the enemy sniper who had her pinned. She made a decision that would haunt her forever or validate everything she'd become. "Daniels, take the rifle." "What?" "Take it. I'm going to draw their fire. When the sniper repositions to track me, you take the shot." "I can't." "You can." Raven grabbed his shoulder, hard. 1,500 meters. Wind west-northwest, 14 knots. Temperature 18 degrees. You know the calculations. You know the shot. Now you just have to make it. Daniel's hands shook as he took the rifle. "What are you going to do?" Raven pulled out her sidearm. "Something stupid." She ran, broke from cover, sprinting along the ridge, exposing herself completely. The enemy sniper tracked her instantly, rounds snapping past, forcing her to weave, to dive, to roll. But she'd created an opening, and Daniels took it. The shot echoed across the valley, and for one frozen moment, everything stopped. Then Raven looked up. The enemy sniper's position was empty. Just a rifle, falling from lifeless hands, tumbling down the rocks. "I got them," Daniels whispered, voice shaking. I got them." Raven scrambled back to position, taking the rifle, checking the enemy position through her scope. The sniper was down. Dead. A single shot through the scope, the hardest shot in existence, the one that required perfect timing and perfect luck. And Daniels had made it. "Good shot," she said quietly. "Now help me clear that courtyard." They worked together now, a team in perfect sync. Daniels calling targets, Raven eliminating them one by one. The enemy forces broke under the precision onslaught, falling back, seeking cover that didn't exist. Stone's voice crackled through. "We're at the cliff, beginning descent with hostages." "Copy. I'll cover your extraction." Raven shifted her aim to the cliff edge, ready to eliminate anyone who tried to follow. The next 10 minutes were the longest of her life. She watched through the scope as the assault team descended with the hostages, weak, injured, but alive. Watched as enemy fighters tried to pursue, only to drop under her fire. Watched as the impossible mission became possible, 1 meter at a time. Finally, Stone's voice. "We're clear. All personnel accounted for. Calling for extract." Raven safetied her rifle. "Copy. Overwatch is RTB." She and Daniels made the descent in record time, adrenaline carrying them down the mountain faster than should have been possible. The helicopter was waiting, rotors spinning, door open. The assault team was already inside, dirty, bloodied, exhausted, but whole. The 6 hostages sat wrapped in thermal blankets, faces drawn but eyes alive with the knowledge that they'd been seconds from death and were now seconds from safety. Raven and Daniels jumped aboard. The helicopter lifted off immediately, banking hard away from the compound. As they climbed into the sky, Raven looked back at the battlefield, at the compound in flames, at the ridge where an enemy sniper had fallen, at the impossible distance she'd just asked a green spotter to shoot across. She looked at Daniels. "How'd you know you could make that shot?" He met her eyes, something new behind them, something harder. "I didn't. But you believed I could, so I did." Stone was grinning despite the blood on his uniform. 6 hostages extracted, 0 friendly casualties, 40+ enemy KIA. He shook his head in disbelief. "Command's going to lose their minds when they hear this." Raven didn't respond. She was staring out into the darkness, thinking about the sniper who'd hunted her, wondering who they'd been, where they'd trained, what program had forged them into the weapon they'd become, wondering if there would be others. The helicopter turned toward home, leaving the mountains and the dead behind. But the questions followed them all the way back. The base materialized from the pre-dawn darkness like a mirage, floodlights burning against the mountains, familiar and foreign, all at once. The helicopter descended hard, skids hitting packed earth with a jarring thud that rattled through Raven's bones. The door slid open. Medical personnel rushed forward with stretchers for the hostages, their movements efficient and practiced. Stone was first out, coordinating the evacuation, barking orders that cut through the rotor wash. Raven stayed in her seat, rifle across her lap, hands steady, but mind somewhere else entirely. Somewhere back on that ridge, staring through a scope at an enemy who'd almost been good enough. Almost. Daniels touched her arm. "Commander? We're home." She looked at him, this kid who'd been terrified 3 days ago, who'd frozen up on the range, who'd just made an impossible shot that saved all their lives. His eyes were different now. Older, harder, the weight of having taken a life settling into the lines of his face. "You did good out there," she said quietly. "I did what you taught me." "No. You did what you were always capable of. I just gave you permission to find out." He nodded slowly, then climbed out of the helicopter. Raven followed, boots hitting ground, the familiar smell of dust and diesel and gun oil washing over her. The command staff was waiting. Colonel Vance stood ramrod straight despite the hour, Major Reeves beside him with a tablet already glowing. Behind them, half the base had turned out, soldiers in various states of dress, drawn by the news that had crackled through the radio net. 6 hostages extracted, 0 friendly casualties. Mission success. Vance stepped forward as Raven approached. "Commander Cole? Hell of a job." "Just following orders, sir." "Orders don't account for what you pulled off out there." Vance glanced at the hostages being loaded onto medical transports. "Those 6 people are alive because you made shots that shouldn't be possible. Because you turned a suicide mission into a textbook extraction. It was a team effort." "Don't be modest, Commander. It doesn't suit you." Vance's expression shifted, became harder. "We need to debrief. Full after-action report. Every detail, every decision, every shot fired." "Understood. When?" "Now." Stone stepped forward, face smudged with dirt and dried blood. "Colonel, with respect, my team's been operating for 18 hours straight. They need rest, medical evaluation. Your team can stand down, Major. I need Commander Cole specifically. Vance's tone left no room for argument. This is non-negotiable. Raven met Stone's eyes. He looked ready to fight, to push back against protocol and rank, and everything that said she had to go with them right now. She gave him a subtle shake of her head. It's fine, Major. Take care of your people. Cole, that's an order. She handed her rifle to Daniels. Clean it, store it properly. I'll want it back when this is done. Daniels took the weapon like it was a sacred artifact. Yes, ma'am. Raven followed Vance and Reeves into the command building, through corridors that seemed narrower than before, into a room she hadn't seen, soundproofed, windowless, with a metal table and chairs that looked like they'd been bolted to the floor. An interrogation room. Vance gestured to a chair. Sit. She sat. Vance remained standing, circling like a shark. Reeves activated a recording device, the red light blinking in the harsh fluorescent glare. For the record, Reeves said, this is a classified debriefing regarding Operation Silent Redemption, conducted on November 7th. Present are Colonel Marcus Vance, Major David Reeves, and Commander Raven Cole. He looked at her. Commander, do you consent to this debriefing? Do I have a choice? No. Then I consent. Vance stopped pacing. Let's start with the enemy's sniper, the one who engaged you during Overwatch. What about them? You eliminated them. Single shot, extreme range, moving target. Vance leaned against the table. How? Raven kept her expression neutral. I didn't eliminate them. Specialist Daniels did. Daniels made the shot, yes, but you set it up. You drew fire, exposed yourself, created the opening. Vance's eyes narrowed. That's not standard procedure. That's not something they teach in sniper school. That's something else. It's called adaptation, Colonel. The situation demanded it. The situation demanded you trust a green spotter with maybe 6 months of training to make a shot that 99% of qualified snipers couldn't make. Vance pulled out a file, dropped it on the table. Unless you knew he could make it. Unless you've been training him specifically for scenarios like this. Raven glanced at the file but didn't touch it. What's your point, sir? My point is that your methods are unconventional. Your decision-making process doesn't align with standard military doctrine, and your capabilities exceed what should be possible for someone with your official training record. He opened the file. 3 years at sniper school, 5 years with various special operations units, standard progression, standard assignments, standard evaluations. That's correct? Except it's not. Vance pulled out a photograph. Grainy, surveillance quality, showing a figure in tactical gear extracting from a rooftop in a city Raven recognized but wouldn't name. This was taken 8 years ago, Caracas, high-value target assassination, unsanctioned by conventional military channels. Raven's expression didn't change. I've never been to Caracas. Officially, you haven't been anywhere the Black Ops program sent you. Vance produced another photo. Damascus, 12 years ago. Counter-sniper operation that prevented a diplomatic assassination. You're chasing ghosts, Colonel. Am I? He slapped down a third photo. This one's my favorite. Mogadishu, 15 years ago. Before you were even officially a sniper. Before your record says you had any advanced training at all. He leaned close. So either you're a time traveler, Commander, or someone's been scrubbing your file clean of operations that never officially happened. The room went silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights. Raven looked at the photos, at the evidence of a life she'd been told was erased, sealed, buried under layers of classification that should have made it impossible to find. Who else has seen these? She asked quietly. Just us. For now. Vance sat down across from her. I'm not trying to burn you, Cole. I'm trying to understand what we're dealing with, because that enemy sniper, the one Daniels killed, we recovered their body. Ran their prints through every database we have access to. And? Nothing. No records, no identity, no country of origin, just like you would be if someone looked too hard. Vance's voice softened slightly. They were a ghost, Commander, same as you, and I need to know if there are more of them out there. If this is a war we're fighting without even knowing it. Raven met his eyes, saw genuine concern there, not just political maneuvering. This wasn't about catching her in a lie. This was about understanding a threat. She made a decision. There's a program, she said. Multiple programs, actually. Different countries, different names, same purpose. Creating operators who can function completely off-grid. No oversight, no paper trail, no public accountability. Assassins. Specialists, people who solve problems that can't be solved through conventional military or diplomatic channels. Raven leaned back. I was recruited 14 years ago, told my official record would continue as normal while I conducted operations that would never be acknowledged. For 6 years, I was a ghost. No identity, no backup, no extraction if things went wrong. What kind of operations? The kind you don't ask about if you want to sleep at night. She paused. But every target I eliminated, and there were many, made the world measurably safer. Arms dealers who would have sold to terrorists. Warlords who were using child soldiers. Scientists developing bioweapons for rogue states. Vance absorbed this. And the other programs, the enemy programs? Same concept, different flags. We'd occasionally cross paths. Sometimes we'd be hunting the same target for different reasons. Sometimes we'd be hunting each other. Raven's jaw tightened. The sniper on that ridge was probably from one of those programs. Maybe Russian, maybe Chinese, maybe something else entirely. They recognized me the same way I recognized them.
How? The way we move, the way we think, the shots we're willing to take. She looked at the photos on the table. You spend enough years in that world, you develop a signature. Other operators can see it, and when they do, it becomes personal. Because you're the only threat that matters. Exactly. Raven stood, moving to the wall, staring at nothing. In that life, you're either the best or you're dead. There's no second place, no participation trophy.
Just survivors and casualties. Reeves spoke for the first time. Why did you leave? The program ended, or they said it did. Raven turned to face them. 6 years of operations, then one day I get pulled out, debriefed, told my service was appreciated, and I should return to normal military life. They gave me my name back, scrubbed most of my records, and sent me back into the world like nothing had happened. But something had happened, Vance said quietly. Everything had happened. I wasn't the same person who'd gone in. Couldn't be. You don't spend 6 years killing people in the dark and come back unchanged. She moved back to the table, placing her hands flat on the metal surface. So I tried. I took assignments, followed orders, played the good soldier. But everywhere I went, I saw the cracks, the inefficiencies, the missions that failed because people followed doctrine instead of adapting. Like Stone's approach to the recon team rescue. Like every conventional approach that gets people killed because it's more important to follow protocol than to save lives. Raven's voice hardened. I didn't come to Griffin to prove anyone wrong, Colonel. I came here to do the job. But the job required unconventional methods, and that made people uncomfortable. Vance nodded slowly. The question is what we do now. Command is going to want explanations for how you pulled off that extraction, how you trained Daniels to make that shot, how you knew the enemy would position forces exactly where you predicted. Tell them I got lucky. They won't believe that. Then tell them the truth, that sometimes the impossible is just the improbable executed perfectly. Raven held his gaze. Or tell them I'm a ghost who should have stayed dead. Your choice. The colonel studied her for a long moment. Finally, he reached over and switched off the recording device. Off the record, he said, you saved 6 American lives tonight. You turned what should have been a bloodbath into a surgical operation. And you did it using skills that officially don't exist against an enemy that officially doesn't exist, in a war that we're not officially fighting. Welcome to reality, sir? Indeed, Vance stood. Here's what's going to happen. The official report will state that you provided exceptional Overwatch support using advanced but standard military tactics. Daniel's shot will be attributed to superior training and optimal conditions. The enemy sniper's presence will be classified as hostile combatant, identity unknown. And the truth? The truth stays in this room, along with those photos and everything else that might raise uncomfortable questions. He moved to the door, then paused. But Cole, if there are more of them out there, more ghosts for more programs, we need to know. Can you identify them? Raven considered the question. Maybe. Depends how sloppy they get. Then I'm assigning you a new mandate. Continue your duties here at Griffin, but also monitor for patterns that might indicate foreign operator activity. If you see something that doesn't fit, you report directly to me. Understood? Understood. Good. Vance opened the door. Dismissed, Commander. And for what it's worth, thank you. Raven walked out into the corridor. the early morning light starting to seep through the windows. The base was coming alive, soldiers heading to breakfast, mechanics working on vehicles, the familiar rhythm of military life reasserting itself. But something had shifted. She could feel it in the way people looked at her as she passed. Not with skepticism anymore. Not with doubt. With respect. Stone was waiting outside her quarters, leaning against the wall, arms crossed. He looked exhausted but alert. That particular combination of bone-tired and wire-tense that came after successful operations. "How'd it go?" he asked. "About how you'd expect." Raven unlocked her door. "They asked questions. I gave answers. Everyone pretended to believe everyone else. So business as usual in the world of classified operations." "Pretty much." She stepped inside, then turned back. "Your team did good work out there, Major. Every one of them performed beyond expectation. They had good leadership." Stone pushed off the wall. "I was wrong about you, Cole. When you first arrived, I thought you were just another operator with a chip on their shoulder trying to prove something to the world. And now? Now I think you're an operator who doesn't give a damn what the world thinks. You just do the job. Consequences be damned." He smiled slightly. "That's either the most dangerous or the most valuable trait a soldier can have." "Why not both?" "Yeah, why not both?" Stone extended his hand. "Thank you. For tonight. For training Daniels. For not letting my stubborn ass get people killed." Raven shook his hand. "You would have figured it out eventually." "Maybe. But a lot of people would have died while I was figuring." He released her hand. "There's talk of commendations. Medals. The whole dog and pony show that brass loves. I don't need medals." "I know. But you're getting them anyway." "Command wants to showcase this operation as a success story, and that means putting you front and center." Raven grimaced. "Wonderful. Could be worse. Could be a court-martial for insubordination." Stone headed down the corridor, then called back. "Get some rest, Commander. You earned it." She closed the door and stood alone in her quarters. The room was exactly as she'd left it, sparse, functional, devoid of personal touches. A soldier's space designed for someone always ready to move. She sat on the bunk, rifle parts spread before her, and began the ritual of cleaning. Muscle memory took over, her hands moving through the motions while her mind wandered elsewhere. To the photos Vance had shown her, to the operations she'd conducted in cities whose names she couldn't speak, to the targets who'd died never knowing who'd pulled the trigger, to the enemy sniper on that ridge who'd been good enough to almost win. A knock interrupted her thoughts. She opened the door to find Daniels standing there, her rifle cradled in his arms like he was carrying a sleeping child. "Cleaned and ready, ma'am." He handed it over carefully. I wanted to say thank you for trusting me, for believing I could make that shot. You made it, that's all that matters. But I almost didn't. When I first looked through the scope, when I saw the distance, the wind, I froze, just like I was afraid I would." Daniels met her eyes. "Then I heard your voice in my head. All the things you taught me. And I realized the fear didn't matter. The doubt didn't matter. Only the shot mattered. That's the lesson, Daniels. Everything else is just noise." He nodded slowly. "Are you leaving? After all this, after what you did, they'll probably promote you, transfer you somewhere important." Raven considered the question. She could leave. Probably should leave. This was her chance to move up, move on, get away from the mountains and the missions and the memories. But something held her here. "I'm staying," she said finally, "at least for now." "Why?" "Because the work isn't done. Because there are more fights coming. And because—" She trailed off, looking past him at the compound, at the men and women preparing for another day in a war that never really ended. "Because maybe I found something worth staying for." Daniels smiled. "Good. Because we still need you, Commander. All of us." He left. Raven closed the door and returned to her rifle, finishing the assembly, checking the action one last time before securing it in the rack. The days that followed blurred together in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Training exercises with Daniels and the others, teaching them the skills that had kept her alive for so long. Patrol rotations, watching the valley for threats that sometimes came and sometimes didn't. Evenings in the command center, analyzing intelligence with Carter, looking for patterns that might indicate another ghost in the machine. And slowly, incrementally, the base changed around her. Briggs stopped glowering and started asking questions about wind reading, about angle compensation, about the thousand small details that separated a good shot from a perfect one. Ortega began joining her morning training runs, matching her pace, pushing himself to keep up with someone who'd been conditioned by years of operations he couldn't imagine. Hayes, nervous and twitchy, started bringing her intelligence reports he thought might be relevant, learning to think like an operator instead of just a soldier following orders. Even Webb, relegated to communications, began understanding the bigger picture, how information flow could mean the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. And Daniels. Daniels grew from a scared kid into something harder, sharper, more capable. He'd never be a ghost like Raven, but he'd be something better, a soldier who understood when to follow doctrine and when to trust his instincts. Stone watched it all with the satisfaction of a commander seeing his team evolve. One evening, 3 weeks after the extraction, he found Raven on the perimeter, staring out at the familiar darkness. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, thinking about what comes next. More missions, more fights, same war, different day. Maybe. Raven didn't look away from the valley. Or maybe something's changing. Maybe we're finally learning to fight smart instead of just fighting hard. Stone considered that. "You've changed this place, Cole. Changed how we operate, how we think, how we approach problems." He paused. "Hell, you've changed me." "How so?" "Made me realize that experience and wisdom aren't always the same thing. That sometimes the new way is better than the old way, even if it's scary." He joined her at the fence, looking out at the mountains. "There's talk of expanding the program, taking what you've built here and applying it to other outposts, other units. They want me to train more people. They want you to build a program, unconventional warfare, advanced tactics, next-generation operator training." Stone looked at her. "You'd have full autonomy. Pick your students, design the curriculum, operate however you see fit. And if I say no, then you stay here and we keep doing what we're doing, but eventually, Command will assign you somewhere else, somewhere that needs your skills for a specific mission, and the cycle starts again." Raven turned the idea over in her mind. A program. Her program. Training the next generation of operators to think, to adapt, to survive in a world where the threats were evolving faster than the doctrine. It was everything she'd never wanted, and everything she'd been preparing for without knowing it. "I'll think about it," she said finally. "That's all I ask." Stone pushed off from the fence. "For what it's worth, I think you'd be good at it. Teaching, I mean. You've got a way of making people believe they can do the impossible. Maybe because I've seen the impossible done so many times, it stopped being impossible." "Yeah, maybe that's it." He headed back toward the command building, then stopped. "Oh, and Cole? That enemy sniper, the one Daniels killed." Raven's attention sharpened. "What about them?" "Intel finally got an ID. Took weeks of running DNA through international databases, calling in favors from allied agencies." Stone's expression was grave. "Russian. Former Spetsnaz, then recruited into something called Program Prizrek. That's Ghost in Russian. Let me guess. Off-book operations, no official record, specialized in long-range elimination? Exactly. Same as your program, just different flag." He pulled out a photo. The enemy sniper's face, taken post-mortem. Young, maybe 30, with the hard eyes of someone who'd seen too much. They'd been operating in this region for 6 months. 17 confirmed kills, all high-value targets. Military commanders, intelligence assets, people who were making a difference. Raven studied the photo. Were they hunting me specifically, or was I just another target? Both, according to intercepted communications. Command sent them to eliminate coalition operators in the region. But once they realized who you were, or what you were, it became personal. Stone took the photo back. "There's more. Intel suggests Program Prizrek has at least a dozen active operators. Could be more. All looking for targets like me. All looking for targets like you." Stone's jaw tightened. "Which is another reason Command wants you running that training program. If there are enemy ghosts out there hunting our people, we need our people to be ready." Raven nodded slowly. "I'll need full access to classified databases. Intelligence on known and suspected foreign operators. Authority to recruit from any unit, any service branch." "You're saying yes. I'm saying if we're going to do this, we do it right. No half measures, no bureaucratic oversight slowing us down. We build operators who can survive in a world where the enemy is just as trained, just as dedicated, just as willing to die for the mission. Stone smiled. I'll brief command tomorrow. They'll approve it. They'd be idiots not to. And Griffin? Griffin becomes the pilot program. We keep operating, keep training, keep proving the concept works. He extended his hand. Welcome to the future of unconventional warfare, Commander. She shook it. Let's hope the future survives long enough to matter. The weeks became months. The program took shape slowly at first, then with increasing momentum as word spread through military channels. Operators from other units began arriving at Griffin. Special Forces veterans, intelligence specialists, snipers looking to push their skills to the absolute limit. Raven trained them hard, pushed them past breaking points they didn't know they had, taught them to think like ghosts, to move like shadows, to make shots that defied probability. And slowly, incrementally, the nature of the war began to change. Enemy operations that would have succeeded started failing. High-value targets that would have escaped started falling. The valley that had been a battleground of attrition became a graveyard for those foolish enough to challenge the new generation of operators Raven was forging. 6 months after the extraction mission, Raven stood in the same planning room where she'd designed the impossible operation. But now it was filled with 24 operators, her operators, listening as she broke down the latest intelligence. Daniel stood at her side, no longer a nervous kid but a confident instructor in his own right, helping coordinate the training rotations. Stone watched from the back of the room, arms crossed, a satisfied smile on his face. And Raven realized something she'd never expected. She'd found her place. Not in the shadows, eliminating targets no one would ever know about, but here, in the light, building something that would outlast her, creating operators who would carry forward the lessons she'd learned through blood and sacrifice and impossible shots in the dark. After the briefing, after the operators had dispersed to their training rotations, Stone approached her. Command's pleased with the results, he said. They want to expand the program. 3 more locations, full funding, authorization to recruit internationally. That's a lot of trust to put in someone who officially doesn't exist. You exist now, Cole. Like it or not, you've become exactly what you were trying to avoid. A symbol. A standard. Stone pulled out a folder. Which is why they're promoting you. Full colonel, effective immediately. Operational command of the entire unconventional warfare training division. Raven took the folder but didn't open it. And if I refuse? Then someone else takes over and probably ruins everything you've built. Stone met her eyes. This is your program, Cole. Your vision. You've earned the right to see it through. She opened the folder. Inside were orders, commendations, a promotion certificate bearing signatures from generals whose names carried weight across the entire military structure, and a single photograph, the 6 hostages from the extraction mission, alive and well, reunited with their families, smiling at the camera. Below it, a handwritten note. Thank you for bringing us home. You gave us our lives back. Raven stared at the photo for a long moment. These 6 people, alive because she'd made a choice, because she'd trusted her training, trusted her team, trusted that the impossible was just another problem to be solved. I'll take the promotion, she said quietly. But on one condition. Name it. Griffin stays operational. This base, this team, they're the foundation of everything we're building. We don't abandon that. Agreed, Stone smiled. Besides, where else would you run your morning training routes? Exactly. Raven closed the folder. Tell command I'll start the expansion planning immediately. But Stone? Yeah? Thank you for trusting me when no one else would, for giving me a chance to prove that different doesn't mean wrong. You didn't prove it to me, Cole. You proved it to yourself. He moved toward the door. That's the real victory here. He left her alone in the planning room, surrounded by maps and intelligence reports and the architecture of a war that was changing shape beneath their feet. Raven moved to the window, looking out at the valley one more time. The same mountains, the same darkness, the same endless watch for threats that might never come. But something was different now. The doubt was gone. The skepticism erased. The whispered questions about whether she belonged, whether she was good enough, whether her methods could work in the real world, all of it silenced by results that spoke louder than any argument. She'd walked into this place as an outsider, a ghost with a reputation and a rifle and a willingness to do things others wouldn't. And she was leaving it, not physically, but symbolically, as something else entirely. A leader, a teacher, a creator of the next generation of warriors who would fight wars the world would never see, against enemies the world would never know about, with skills the world would never fully understand. Daniels appeared in the doorway.
Colonel? He still stumbled over the new rank. Sorry, Commander. No, that's not right either. Cole is fine, Daniels. Cole, then. He stepped inside. The new recruits just arrived. 18 operators from 7 different countries.
They're asking when training starts. Tell them 0500 tomorrow. Full kit, no excuses.
Raven turned from the window. And Daniels? Yeah? That shot you made. The impossible one. I need you to teach it. Break it down into components, create a training progression, make it repeatable. His eyes widened. You want me to teach people how to make a 1,500-meter kill shot through a scope? I want you to teach them that impossible is just a word, that with the right training, the right mindset, the right moment, anything can be done. She placed a hand on his shoulder. You proved that. Now help others prove it too. Daniels straightened, something fierce and proud burning in his eyes. Yes, ma'am. I won't let you down. You never have, kid. That's why I'm trusting you with this. He left, practically running to prepare for the morning training session. Raven stood alone again, but the solitude felt different now. Not lonely, not isolated, just quiet. The kind of quiet that came before dawn, before the world woke up, before the next mission and the next fight and the next impossible task that needed someone willing to attempt it. She pulled out her rifle, checked it one last time, then secured it in the rack. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new operators to train, new threats to counter, new impossible shots to make or teach others to make. But tonight, in this moment, there was only the satisfaction of a job well done, of lives saved, of doubters converted, of a standard set so high that it would take years for anyone to match it. And that was enough. The valley stretched endlessly into darkness, holding its secrets, waiting for the next ghost to walk its ridges and valleys. But this ghost had found something better than shadows. She'd found purpose. She'd found a team worth leading. She'd found proof that skill doesn't need permission, it just needs opportunity. And in that discovery, Raven Cole, once a ghost hunter, now a creator of the hunters who would protect the world from the darkness, finally found peace. Not the peace of endings, the peace of new beginnings. Years later, operators would tell stories about Griffin, about the base in the mountains where impossible became standard, about the colonel who could make shots that defied physics, about the program that changed how modern warfare was fought. They'd tell stories about a woman who walked into a hostile compound surrounded by doubters and walked out surrounded by believers, about 12 enemies eliminated in 5 minutes, about 6 hostages saved against impossible odds, about a green spotter who made a shot no one thought possible, about the moment when everything everyone believed about capability and limitation and what one person could achieve got rewritten completely. But those stories weren't about Raven Cole anymore. They were about what she'd built, what she'd created, what she'd left behind for the next generation. And in a world where ghosts fought wars in the shadows, that legacy mattered more than any medal, any commendation, any recognition the official record could ever provide. Because in the end, skill doesn't ask for belief. It demands the world witness it. And once witnessed, it can never be denied again. The greatest proof of capability isn't what you accomplish alone. It's what you enable others to achieve long after you're gone.